Chapter 1261. Little Phoenix should have stayed here for a while, maybe she knew where Kirin was trapped. Ning Xuema patted Hong Ti's head and asked, "Hong Ti, have you seen a blue Kirin in this valley?" Hong Ti nodded and looked at Ning Xuema with her big black and white eyes. "I saw it, I smelled Master's scent on it, so I have been staying in the Valley of End Return. Master, what is your relationship with it? Is it your new spiritual pet?" There seemed to be a trace of grievance in her voice. She had asked the Kirin, but the Kirin refused to tell her. Ning Xuema nodded and continued to ask, "Where is it? Take me to find it." Hong Ti nodded and replied, "Yes, Master." Looking at Ning Xuema, she hesitated for a long time and then carefully asked, "Master, are you on good terms with it? Do you like it very much?" Ning Xuema had a bit of a headache. A pet in her previous life was jealous of a pet in this life. How could she mediate this? She nodded, "It is not only my spiritual pet, but also my friend, so Hong Ti, I have to save it." Hong Ti's small head drooped down. The light in her eyes dimmed quite a bit, but she did her best to force out a smile. She put on a happy expression for Ning Xuema and said in a low voice, "Master has a new pet in this life. As long as Master is happy." Her voice was getting smaller and smaller, and then she suddenly raised her head and looked at Ning Xuema. "Master has someone to take care of you when I am not here. Hong Ti is very happy." Hong Ti tried to hide the jealousy in her tone, but it was not so successful. Ning Xuema could still hear the monstrous jealousy and grievance in her tone. Ning Xuema sighed in her heart. She did not expect that she actually had to coax a child. She patted Hong Ti's head. "You are also my friend, you and Kirin are my very important friends." Hong Ti raised her eyes pitifully and asked, "Equally important?" Ning Xuema nodded. "It's just as important." Only then did Hong Ti become happy. She threw herself into Ning Xuema's arms and rubbed against it. Then she got up with satisfaction and said happily, "Master, let me take you there. That place is still quite far from here and it's a little dangerous. After all, there were countless snakes and scorpions in the valley. If they were not careful, they would die without a burial ground. But after Little Phoenix came, he became the overlord here. It was so domineering that the poisonous creatures were scared witless when they saw it." Her figure rose up, and countless streams of light condensed, gradually transforming into a phoenix in midair. "Master, come up." Ning Xuema jumped and rode on the phoenix's back. She grabbed its feathers and said, "Let's go." The little phoenix let out a long phoenix cry, spread its wings and flew forward. Ning Xuema sat on the phoenix's back and faintly saw that where little phoenix passed by, countless black things below scattered to both sides like a tide, just like Moses parting the sea. She suddenly thought of something, and the hand holding little phoenix's feathers slightly tightened. She asked, "Hong Ti, did you see the person who was with me just now?" Little Phoenix nodded. Countless streams of light scattered and a clear voice sounded, "Are you referring to the man in black? In order to be alone with Master, I trapped him outside the valley. He can't come in." Ning Xuema. This was a very possessive little phoenix. She was wondering why she didn't see Shijue come in. It turned out that he was trapped outside the valley by Little Phoenix. Chapter 1262. It was safer outside the valley and Shijue should be fine. After a while, the little phoenix spread its wings and glided toward a cave. While flying it said, "Master, that Qilin is inside." The cave was fiery red. After the little phoenix flew for a while, Ning Xuema saw Kirin on a big rock in front of her. It was sleeping on top of it with its tail drooping. The little phoenix stopped not far from Kirin and shouted, "Dead Qilin, wake up, dead Qilin." Kirin raised its eyelids and looked at the huge phoenix in front of it. It turned its body and used its butt to face her. Its tail waved in the air and hit the enchantment barrier, but it bounced back. It said impatiently, "Why are you here again? I tell you, don't think you can get any information about my master from me. This mythological beast will not betray my master even if I die. Get out of here." The little phoenix was very angry. It was about to spit out fire to burn Kirin's, but when it suddenly paused, its black eyes turned and it said with a smile, "Master, listen, this dead Qilin would rather become a dead Qilin than to be saved by us. Let's go." At the same time, a clear and familiar voice sounded with a slight smile, "Little apple." Kirin suddenly turned its head and almost broke its neck, but it didn't care at all. Its eyes were like a pair of copper bells as it anxiously looked around. It seemed to have heard its master's voice. Finally, it saw Ning Xuema smiling on the back of the huge phoenix. It was pleasantly surprised and rushed over. Its whole Qilin face was stuck on the enchantment barrier. It was squeezed out of shape by the barrier. It excitedly said, Master. Master. I finally found you. Little Apple is not dreaming, right? Stupid Kirin, she found it first, right? Ning Shuima jumped down and touched the enchantment barrier. It was very elastic. She frowned. Little Apple, do you know who trapped you here? Little Apple shook its big head and looked a little angry. I don't know. I was hit by a stick and fainted. When I woke up, I was trapped here. Glancing at the shrinking little phoenix, it gritted its teeth and said, I suspect that this demonic phoenix did it. Because a few days later, she flew over to ask about your whereabouts. It seemed to have suddenly thought of something and jumped up. Master, why are you with this phoenix? She's the phoenix of the devil realm. Little Apple bared his teeth at Little Phoenix and roared, Speak, what did you do to Master? Why is Master with you? Little Phoenix was so angry that he stomped his feet and shouted, This is my master. What? Of course she's with me. You were beaten up by someone but you didn't even know who the other party was. You were foolishly trapped here. If it wasn't for me feeding you, you would have become a dead Qilin. How dare you accuse me? You heartless and brainless Qilin. Little Apple was furious. How did I become your master? I knew that a fat phoenix like you coveted my master. But no matter how much you covet him, he is still my master. What? Master gave me a name. Did he give you a name? Do you even have a name? You actually want to pretend to be Master's pet? I'm Master's pet. He dotes on me the most. Ning Shuima. Where did Little Apple learn these words? Little Phoenix raised its phoenix eyes proudly and said arrogantly, Of course Master gave me a name. This phoenix is called Hong Ti. What an elegant and noble name. I'm Master's favorite pet. Chapter 1263. Little Apple sneered, Hong Ti? Isn't it just a red grape? This fat phoenix of yours is really like a round grape. Little Phoenix stomped its feet. Isn't the apple round? Isn't the apple round? Look at your malnourished Kirin, you gave it a round name just to puff yourself up at your own cost. Ning Shuima, thinking about it this way, whether it was in her previous life or this life, the names she gave to her pets were all round things. Now, these two pets were using each other's names to mock and ridicule each other. She was the one who was unjustly implicated. She rubbed her eyebrows and said helplessly, You too. Little Apple and Hong Ti turned their heads and stared at her at the same time. They said in unison, Master, who do you like the most? Then they glared at each other in disgust. Ning Shuima felt her head hurt even more. Hong Ti glared at Little Apple. Why are you imitating me? Stupid Kirin. Little Apple was so angry that his tail stood up. Who's learning from you? You're the one who imitated me. You shameless fat phoenix. Stupid Kirin. Fat phoenix. Stupid Kirin. Ning Shuima endured for a while before finally reaching the end of her patience. You two shut up for me. If you make any more noise, I'll kick you both out. Her roar had the effect of a lion's roar, and the two immediately stopped arguing. Looking at the two beasts who were so scared that they curled up into a ball, Ning Shuima lectured them, How old are you two? Hundreds and thousands of years old and you're still arguing like children? Kirin retorted weakly, Master, I'm still underage in the Kirin's body? Ning Shuima glared at it. Not to be outdone, Little Phoenix also said, Master, I'm also not an adult yet. My age is only equivalent to a 5 or 6-year-old human child. After saying that, a stream of light condensed and a cute little girl in red appeared in front of Little Qilin. Ning Shuima didn't have the strength to complain. She rubbed her eyebrows. Okay, you two are just kids, so I'm the most mature. Now quiet down, don't quarrel. The world finally quieted down. Ning Shuima breathed a sigh of relief and carefully studied the thin barrier in front of her. She lowered her head and asked Little Phoenix, Hong Ti, you said that you've been feeding Little Apple. There's a barrier here, how did you throw the food in? The little phoenix swaggered around like a victor as it disdainfully glanced at the little Qilin. It then turned its head to face Ning Shuima with an adorable smile. Master, I also don't know why, but this barrier seems to only allow entry and not exit. I once tried to use a feather from the tip of my wing to enter the barrier, but I couldn't pull it back. I could only tear off that feather. You see, my wingtip is still missing a feather. Hong Ti's right arm flashed and turned into a pair of brilliant wings. Hong Ti the Kirin's red, apple, s red. Ti. She even put her wing in Ning Shuima's hand and let her touch it. Ning Shuima looked at the half-human, half-bird Hong Ti in front of her. Her mouth twitched as she touched her feathers and said dryly, Not bald, it's good. Little Phoenix was satisfied and turned her wing into an arm. She rubbed it in Ning Xuema's palm and took it back. Then she glanced at Kirin proudly. Kirin coldly snorted, "Birdman?" Little Phoenix glanced at it contemptuously. "You can't even transform, what qualifications do you have to talk about me?" Chapter 1264. When Ning Xuema saw that they were about to quarrel again, she felt a headache coming on. Just as she was about to say something, Kirin's body suddenly flashed and disappeared in an instant. Instead, a boy wearing a blue robe sat on the ground. His arms were like lotus roots, his face was tender and white, and his big round eyes were like black grapes. He proudly looked at Hong Ti and said, "I've transformed, how is it?" Ning Xuema said, "Little apple, your cultivation is not bad." 10 years ago he was also able to transform, but at that time he was a Kirin man. His whole body was covered with blue scales, and at first glance, it was obvious that he was not human. But now he had transformed into a pure human appearance. And it was such a cute little boy. Little Apple's tender and white face blushed, making him look like a round red apple. "And thank you, master, for your praise. I've been cultivating with all my might and I can finally transform." Little Phoenix snorted at this. "Little brat." Ning Xuema was speechless as she looked at the 5 or 6-year-old Hong Ti, who was acting arrogant, elegant, and noble. She really wanted to shake Hong Ti and ask her where she got her confidence from. She was still a little lowly, mocking others as little brats. Then she looked at Little Apple, who stood up shakily and was even more speechless. Little Apple could indeed transform, but it looked like he had just learned how to run. Looking at the 2 little brats in front of her, Ning Xuema had a kind of heart-wrenching feeling, as if she was raising 2 children. She shook her head and hurriedly threw away this horrible illusion. What a joke, she was still a young and beautiful girl. Where did these 2 big kids come from? She drove the messy thoughts out of her mind, and the expression on her face became serious as she carefully observed the enchantment. Little Apple and Hong Ti also knew that they should not disturb her, so they finally quieted down. Especially Little Apple, he did not even dare to breathe, for fear that he would scare away Ning Xuema's thoughts and make her unable to break this enchantment. God knows that he was trapped in this enchantment and was so bored that he could only count his scales for fun. Ning Xuema suddenly drew a complicated talisman in the air, which flashed with a dazzling golden light. With a snap, the talisman was stuck on the barrier. As soon as the talisman came into contact with the barrier, it ignited with a whoosh, and in a moment, only ashes were left on the ground. It was useless. Ning Xuema frowned. This wizardry barrier was very strange. It contained an extremely high amount of psychokinesis. It could be seen that the person who set up the wizardry barrier must have an extremely high psychokinesis. This was where the conflict arose. Since that person's telekinesis was so high, defeating Kirin would be as easy as flipping his hand. Why would he want to trap Kirin here? Ning Xuema's heart suddenly sank. Unless that person wanted to use Kirin to attract someone. Casting a long line to catch a big fish, that person's ultimate goal was not Kirin. It was her. Ning Xuema. Ning Xuema felt cold sweat trickling down her forehead. Thinking about it, that person's identity was almost obvious. Shuilan. No, she had to quickly save Kirin and quickly leave this place. Ning Xuema looked at the wizardry barrier in front of her. She had been trapped by Shuilan for 10 years, so she was very familiar with the wizardry barrier set up by Shuilan. Although the wizardry barrier in front of her was camouflaged, she could still feel Shuilan's presence if she carefully felt it. It really was him. Ning Xuema's heart started to beat faster. She naturally could not give up on Kirin at this time. She subconsciously looked around but did not see Shuilan's shadow. That's right, Kirin had been missing for 10 years. Perhaps it was trapped here by Shuilan long ago, so Shuilan might not be able to take care of it now. Chapter 1265. She quickly looked at the wizardry barrier and found that it wasn't too difficult to break. As long as she was given a quarter of an hour, she should be able to rescue the little Qilin. She used her hand to feel for a flaw in the wizardry barrier and asked Kirin, "Little Apple, how long have you been trapped here? Has it been 10 years? Kirin opened her eyes wide and shook her head like a rattle drum. "No, it's only been a few days. I was trapped in the stone spirit's stomach and only managed to escape a few days ago." Ning Xuema was speechless. How unlucky was Kirin to be swallowed by the stone spirit twice. Wait, a few days ago. Wasn't that after the Almighty rescued her? Then this was really Shuilan's trap. Oh no, with Shuilan's perverted personality, he was probably hiding nearby. Perhaps he was watching her from a dark corner. This speculation made Ning Xuema's hair stand on end. She felt as if she was being stared at by a poisonous snake, which made her extremely uncomfortable. Just as she was pondering whether she should give up first and turn back to pull the great god over to save the little Qilin, a gust of wind suddenly blew from behind her. There seemed to be a faintly discernible fragrance in the air. Inside the enchantment, little Apple's vision turned black and she fell to the ground with a plop. Ning Xuema's expression changed. She was about to turn around when a fair hand reached out from nowhere and gently covered Ning Xuema's eyes. He whispered in her ear, "Momo, I caught you, Shuilan." Ning Xuema was extremely sad because she didn't check the almanac before leaving the house. Her body stiffened for a moment, and she raised her hand to remove his hand from her eyes. Not bad, Shuilan's hand was easily pried open by her. Her figure shook as she retreated a few steps like moving clouds and flowing water. She then turned around to face him. "Sire, you've mistaken me for someone else?" She was still in disguise and had the standard appearance of a man. Perhaps Shuilan was just tricking her. Shuilan stood there with his arms crossed. The heavenly wind caused his red robe to flutter in the wind. His gaze fell on Ning Xuema's face, circling back and forth as if he wanted to see a flower on her face. Ning Xuema tried her best to remain calm and looked up at him. Her expression didn't reveal anything. Shuilan's beautiful eyebrows raised and he smiled faintly. "You're really not Momo?" "Of course not." Ning Xuema denied it. The moment she saw Shuilan, even her voice became rough. It was a standard male voice, which was as different as heaven and earth from her original voice. "Oh, if you're not Momo, then why did you save this Kirin?" Shuilan's eyes flashed slightly. "Kirins are ancient mythical beasts. Who doesn't want them? This humble one wants to save it and subdue it as a pet. However, if this Qilin belongs to your excellency, then a gentleman will not snatch what others like. This humble one will not fight with your excellency over it. Goodbye." Ning Xuema finished her speech and took advantage of the situation to turn around and leave. It wasn't that she wasn't loyal enough, but with her current strength she wasn't a match for this bastard. She could only take a step back. As long as she could escape now, it would be the same as finding a way to call for reinforcements to save the little Qilin. She had just taken a few steps when a red shadow flashed in front of her eyes. A figure suddenly appeared in front of her. Fortunately, Ning Xuema was secretly on guard. Otherwise, she would have directly bumped into the other party's chest. Her feet paused for a moment. Almost without thinking, her slender chest skillfully flipped the clouds as she retreated 3 zhang in the air. After landing on the ground, she looked at Shuilan in front of her. "Sire, why are you obstructing me?" Chapter 1266. Ning Xuema deliberately used every word she said to him. Her tone was different from how she usually spoke. Shuilan smiled gently. "Since you're not Momo but you found Kirin's whereabouts, how can I let you go?" Ning Xuema's heart sank. How could she forget that Shuilan had always killed people without batting an eyelid? Was he going to kill her to silence her? She took a few more steps back. "Are you waiting for someone to take the bait by imprisoning Kirin here? I think you need someone to spread the news for you and then the person you're waiting for may come." Shuilan's gaze was unclear. "You want to be the one to spread the news. As long as you let me go, it's not impossible." Ning Xuema also threw caution to the wind. It wasn't despicable for her to spread the news to herself, right? "You're really a smart person. I like to deal with smart people. Alright, I can let you go." Shuilan seemed to be really moved and his tone softened. Ning Xuema's heart was happy and she cupped her fist at him. "Then, we'll meet again." Damn it, she only hoped that she would never meet him again. She picked up the little phoenix that was poisoned by Shuilan, turned around and walked away. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, 5 steps, 10 steps, there was no movement behind her. Ning Xuema's body was stiff, and she didn't dare to look back. She seemed to be taking big steps but in fact her palms were sweating because of nervousness. "Wait!" Shuilan suddenly said behind her. "Ning Xuema. What was this bastard up to now?" She could only look back. "Is there anything else?" Shuilan stood there with his arms crossed. He was only a few steps away from Kirin, who was inside the barrier. He smiled leisurely and said, "I suddenly remembered something. The person I am waiting for is as cunning as a little fox. She might not believe you if you tell her empty words. Taking 10,000 steps back, even if she believed him, she would definitely bring powerful reinforcements. That would not be good. That's why we need something to intimidate her." Ning Xuema's heart suddenly sank. She could vaguely guess Shuilan's next move. Her expression changed slightly. "What do you mean?" Shuilan smiled again. He had always loved to smile, and his smile was like a harmless and elegant young master. "It's very simple. I can cut something from this little Qilin's body and let you bring it to that person. Then tell her to come in person. Don't bring anyone otherwise, hee. Ning Xuema was disgusted by his hee. What, do you want to cut from it? Shuilan looked at Ning Xuema and then at Qirin who was lying there. He then discussed with her, I'm afraid you can't carry it if I cut off too much. How about cutting off one of its hooves? This hoof is only a few dozen kilograms. It shouldn't be too difficult for you to carry it. After he finished speaking, he raised his hand and broke the barrier. Then he took out a sharp knife from who knows where and measured it against the little Qilin's body. Tell me, should I cut off its front hooves? Or its back hoof? Which hoof is more convenient to carry? Ning Xuema. She really thought that cutting off his hand would be more convenient to carry. This bastard must have seen through her and was just teasing her now. On the Tianyin Peak, the original format of the main hall and the side hall had changed. There was now a small two-story building in the northwest direction. Its scale was similar to the side hall that Ning Xuema lived in. However, its style and layout were not the same as the main hall. It looked a little lonely. Chapter 1267. Yunxi was living in this newly built building. This time she moved in openly because she was injured. She was seriously injured. One of her arms had been crippled. It had been torn off by a ferocious monster. Fortunately, Xinjiuli had acted in time and snatched her arm back from the monster's mouth. He had also used a spell to reattach it. Otherwise she would have become a one-armed fairy. Although her arm had been reattached, the tendons and meridians inside had not been completely reconnected. Xinjiuli had still needed to use a secret technique to nurse her health and unblock her meridians. Only then would there be hope for her arm to be reattached and return to normal. Xinjiuli had done his best to heal her this time. After all, she had gotten injured because of him. She had even sacrificed her tracking bird and 2 precious silver canary sparrows for Xinjiuli's mission. Although she had often come to Tianyin Peak, Xinjiuli had never allowed her to stay overnight. No matter how late it was, he would always send her off. This was the only time she could finally stay. When Xinjiuli had brought her back to Tianyin Peak, she had actually taken a fancy to the side hall where Ning Xuema had stayed. Anyway, Ning Xuema had run away with Shijua. She had acted so ruthlessly at that time. Based on Xinjiuli's character, he would most likely cut off all ties with Ning Xuema and expel her from the sect. Therefore, Ning Xuema probably would not be able to come back. Unless that woman was thick-skinned enough to kneel down and beg Xinjiuli for forgiveness. However, the possibility of that happening was not very high. Ning Xuema was too proud. Now that she and Xinjiuli had become so tense, she would probably be too embarrassed to come back. Perhaps from now on, Xinjiuli and Ning Xuema would no longer have anything to do with each other. Because of this, Yunxi thought that Xinjiuli would naturally arrange for her to stay in that side hall. She had even secretly planned to quietly clear out all the things that belonged to Ning Xuema after she moved in. This would mean that she would completely remove that woman from Xinjiuli's life. In the future, only Yunxi would be by his side. Her plan was good. She had even hinted that she wanted to stay in that side hall. However, Xinjiuli only glanced at that side hall and said indifferently, "That place is not suitable for you." With a wave of his sleeves, he used a spell to build a small 2-story building and arranged for her to stay there. Xinjiuli helped her treat the injury on her arm again. When he was combing through her tendons and veins, he seemed a little uneasy. When he channeled his psychokinesis into her body, he did not control his strength very well. As a result, one of the blood vessels on her arm almost burst. Fortunately, he noticed it in time and adjusted it for her. After he finished treating her, Yunxi made up her mind and threw herself into his arms with tears in her eyes. "Julie, I'm in so much pain." In the past she had inadvertently seen the way Ning Xuema and Xinjiuli interacted. Ning Xuema liked to hug Xinjiuli's arm and act coquettishly. Occasionally when she was injured she would throw herself into his arms like a cat and cry out in pain. At that time, Xinjiuli would always gently massage her sore spots. Although he looked helpless, his eyes were full of love. In the past, when she interacted with Xinjiuli, she was too ladylike and could not let go. She always thought that he liked quiet and sensible girls. Therefore she tried her best to be generous, sensible, gentle and considerate. However, she did not expect that Ning Xuema would steal him away, which made her feel very frustrated. Chapter 1268. Now that she finally had a chance, she naturally didn't want to miss it. She wanted to learn from Ning Xuema and throw herself into Xinjiuli's arms and act coquettishly. Julie would definitely slowly fall in love with her that way. Ah! Yunxi was sent flying. Yunxi had thought that Xinjiuli would hug her and comfort her. However, she had never expected that Xinjiuli would directly send her flying. She flew backward. Just as she was about to hit the ground, Xinjiuli flicked his sleeve and tossed Yunxi into a chair. Jiuli. Yunxi really wanted to cry this time. She looked at Xinjiuli with tears in her eyes, her expression full of grievance. Such a charming beauty was crying like a pear blossom in the rain. If it had been anyone else, they would have felt sympathy and wanted to hug her and comfort her. However, Xinjiuli only glanced at her indifferently and frowned slightly. His voice was like flowing water as he said, "Have a good rest." Without looking at her again, he fluttered away. Yunxi was speechless. She bit her lip, her eyes full of unwillingness. However, she didn't dare chase after him, so she could only give up. Xinjiuli returned to the main hall. After standing quietly for a while, he sat down quietly and started playing chess. Suddenly, a clear voice came from outside the hall. "Master, disciple Yelu Jing, and wishes to see you. Come in." A faint voice came from inside the hall. This was the scene that greeted Yelu Jing, and when he came in, the main hall was filled with the fragrance of tea. Xinjiuli was fiddling with a chess piece for a long time. Judging by his expression, he seemed to be thinking about something. Yelu Jing, and didn't dare to guess why his master was distracted. He bowed respectfully. "Master." There was no reply for a long time, so Yelu Jing, and could only bow quietly and wait. After a while he heard a pa sound. He knew that his master had finally placed his chess piece. Xinjiuli's indifferent voice was heard. "Get up. What's the matter?" He didn't even look at Yelu Jing, and as he picked up another chess piece. Yelu Jing, and replied respectfully, "Master, disciple wants to make a trip to the Bright King Palace." Xinjiuli finally looked up. "What's the matter?" Yelu Jingan felt a little strange. In the past, her master had always given her leave without asking about the disciple's private matters. Why was he suddenly interested this time? However, he still replied respectfully, "The Bright King has invited me to preside over Crown Prince Shijua's wedding." The chess piece in Xinjiuli's hand fell to the ground, but he didn't care about it at all. There was finally a slight fluctuation in his usually calm voice. "What?" Yelu Jing, and looked at the fallen chess piece and his heart skipped a beat. He lifted his eyes slightly and quietly repeated, "The Bright King has invited me to preside over Crown Prince Shijua's wedding." After thinking for a while, he added, "If master doesn't agree, this disciple will properly refuse." After a while, Yelu Jing, and heard Xinjiuli's voice, "Go." Yelu Jing, and respectfully withdrew. Xinjiuli subconsciously wanted to continue playing chess. He picked up a chess piece and was about to place it down when he suddenly realized that the chess piece he had accidentally placed was blocking his life gate. "Xinjiuli." He sat there quietly, motionless. After a while, Xinjiuli waved his sleeves and countless chess pieces fell to the ground. He didn't even look at the chess pieces. In a flash, he transformed into a ray of white light and flew out. The Bright King Palace. Everywhere was a joyous red. The dragon, phoenix, and red candles burned high in the hall. It was extremely festive. Chapter 1269. A beautiful young lady dressed in purple turned around and clapped her hands. She had a confident smile on her face as she said, "Let's go. Come with me to catch the groom." Outside the valley. Shijue couldn't tell the direction in the thick fog. After an unknown amount of time, a breeze blew and the fog gradually thinned and dissipated. Shijue rose and flew towards the entrance of the valley. Before he could fly inside, a red light flashed in front of him and he was bounced back. Shijue flipped over and stood firmly on the ground. He looked at the faintly discernible red barrier in front of him and his heart sank. There wasn't a barrier here before. He tried to break the barrier but couldn't. Blue light condensed in his hand and he planned to break the barrier with brute force. Suddenly, his waist tightened and he flew back uncontrollably. His long eyebrows slightly wrinkled. With a flip of his hand, a sword appeared in his hand and he directly slashed at the thing that was entangled with him. "Little brother, if you don't want your sword to be damaged, then stop." A lazy voice sounded. "Sister?" Shijua's body stiffened and he looked at the whip at his waist. It was indeed his sister's soul-entangling whip. In such a short time, Shijue had already flown in front of Mingwan. The whip loosened and Shijue subconsciously wanted to run. However, Mingwan's hand was faster. She pointed at a certain acupuncture point on his body and Shijue's entire body stiffened. Shijue frowned and coldly asked, "Sister, what are you doing?" Mingwan glanced at him and patted his head with a smile. She simply said, Sister has chosen a good marriage for you. Now, I'm going to tie you up and bring you back to get married. What? The anger in Shijua's eyes almost materialized. I don't agree. The only one I want to marry is Shuema. I definitely won't marry anyone else. Unfortunately, Ning Shuema isn't someone you can covet, little brother. If Shui Yilan and the ancestor were to stand there, her little brother wouldn't be able to stand in line. Mingwan felt a headache and simply didn't explain. She waved her hand and domineeringly said, "Objection overruled. Men, bring the crown prince back." Shiju roared, "Even if you bring me back, I won't cooperate with the marriage. If you don't want to embarrass the Bright King Manor, then let me go." Mingwan looked at her worrisome brother who was yelling at her. She gritted her teeth and suddenly revealed a sly smile. "Little brother, if you didn't mention it, I would have forgotten." Shijua looked at his sister's smile and suddenly had a bad feeling. Subconsciously he wanted to retreat, but his body was frozen in place, unable to move. Mingwan's hand was as fast as lightning as she lightly tapped his body. Shiju felt the corners of his mouth rise uncontrollably as he smiled happily. Mingwan smiled and said, "Little brother, marriage is such a joyous occasion. Do it well." "Good." Laugh. Shiju, the Bright King's Crown Prince's wedding was undoubtedly grand and extravagant. There were many guests and firecrackers in the hall. Countless young girls who adored the Crown Prince felt their hearts shatter. Looking at this dreamlike wedding, countless young girls were green with envy. She wondered which family's daughter was so lucky to be able to marry the handsome and powerful Crown Prince of the Bright King Manor. Shiju was also very curious about this. His acupuncture points were sealed by his sister, so he could only listen to her orders stiffly. With a silly smile on his face, he walked into the hall with the bride. He looked at the bride beside him who was dressed splendidly with a veil over her head. A trace of unwillingness flashed across his eyes. Chapter 1270. The only person he wanted to marry was Ning Shuema. But now he was being forced to marry a woman he had never met before. Shijua felt as if his entire body was burning. He wanted to turn into a ray of light and get as far away from this damned wedding as possible, but his body was uncontrollably standing next to the bride, and he even held the bride's hand stiffly. The guests were full of praises, thinking that the bride had married into a good family. Countless unmarried young ladies looked at the two's intertwined hands, then looked at Shijua's joyful smile, and finally, their gazes towards the bride were filled with envy. Shijua fiercely looked at his intertwined hands with the bride, wishing he could chop it off. Mingwan sat at the top of the great hall. She was graceful and had a graceful smile on her face. However, there was a hint of warning in her eyes when she looked at him. Yalu Jing'an's calm voice had a hint of a smile as she followed the steps and calmly presided over the wedding. "First, bow to heaven and earth." Yalu Jing'an's voice sounded. Shijua's body involuntarily bowed, his heart almost sinking into the water, and his gaze towards Mingwan was filled with unwillingness and anger. Mingwan sighed inwardly, but maintained a faint smile on her face all along. "Second, bow to your parents." Shijua fiercely looked at the bride beside him, wishing that a gust of wind would blow her away and never come back. Perhaps Shijua's resentment was too strong. A strong wind suddenly blew in the main hall, causing everyone to be unable to open their eyes. In the whistling wind, Shijua opened his eyes wide, and then he was incomparably happy to see the bride's body uncontrollably fly out like a gust of wind, instantly disappearing without a trace. Blown away. Blown away. It seemed that the heavens really heard his inner prayers. They really blew away that eyesore of a bride. "That's great. It couldn't be any better." Shijua really smiled this time, a smile from the bottom of his heart. Without the bride, he wanted to see who his sister would force him to marry. When everyone could open their eyes, only Shijua was left standing there alone in the main hall, and the bride was nowhere to be seen. The hall was suddenly in a state of chaos. Some ran out to find the bride and some stood there to watch the show. They exchanged words with their eyes. It was a mess. Mingwan's face was as calm as water. She looked at Shiju coldly as if asking, "Did you do it?" Shiju maintained his smile and replied to his sister with a calm gaze, "No." Yelu Jing and looked at the door, smelling the familiar fragrance in the air, deep in thought. He was wondering why his master would steal someone else's bride. Thinking about it was one thing, but he definitely wouldn't expose this point. Looking down at the increasingly noisy hall, he waved his hand and was just about to say something when he suddenly paused. A gust of wind blew and a red shadow flashed at the door. The bride flew back into the hall with the wind and slowly landed on the ground. "Shiju." Yelu Jing'in, all the guests. Mingwan was stunned. She looked at the bride and seemed a little confused. But since the bride was back, the wedding could continue. So, she said calmly, continue? The ceremonial music started playing again. Full of resentment, Shiju bowed to the bride and her husband. Shinjioli heaved a sigh of relief. It wasn't her. When he saw the scene in the wedding hall and saw the bride obediently bowing to Shiju, he felt as if he was struck by lightning. He couldn't care about anything else and simply snatched the bride away. Chapter 1271. But when he hugged her, he felt that something was wrong. With a slight movement of his fingers, the bride's veil was lifted up, revealing a beautiful face. That face was full of panic, but it was unfamiliar. He threw her away reflexively. He was invisible the whole time, so the bride did not see him. Just as the bride was about to land on the ground, Shinjioli seemed to have thought of something. He waved his sleeves and a gust of wind blew the bride back. In his impression, that girl had always been particular about being together for a lifetime. If Shijue had already married someone else, she would definitely not marry Shijue, right? He had finally cut off this rotten peach blossom. The ancestor's little abacus was very good. But if Shijue was married to someone else, then where was Ning Shuema? Didn't she leave with Shijue at that time? Could it be that she said those words to anger him? She did not really like Shijue. Otherwise, with her personality, she would not have allowed Shijue to marry someone else. Maybe she really met Shijue by chance and then broke up with him. Then where would she go after breaking up with him? She was a single woman and had such a disaster-attracting physique. There was even a powerful demon in her body. If she walked around like this, she would be in danger from time to time. This troublesome little bastard. Why did he accept such a disciple in the first place? What was even more infuriating was that he always seemed to find it hard to let go of her. Her matters could always stir up his emotions. Shinjioli flipped his hand and a snow-white bird appeared. The bird flew into the air and its little head swayed everywhere. Suddenly, it paused and its little body flew out like a cannonball. Shinjioli followed closely behind. Ning Shuema had been missing for 10 years. In order to prevent her from silently disappearing for another 10 years, Shinjioli secretly put a tracking spell on her. When he heard about Shijue's wedding, he flew over like lightning and actually forgot about the tracking spell. Ning Shuema turned around to face Shuilan. Shuilan, you're really haunting me. She said this with her original voice, which was very clear and pleasant to the ear. Shuilan smiled. Momo, you finally know that you can't escape from me, nor can you hide from me. For you I can do anything. He looked extremely satisfied. His fingers waved around as if he was pointing at the mountains. Momo, do you like the name of this place? I specifically chose this place, Jianghu Valley. You will be returned to my side in the end, because you will be mine for all eternity. Pervert. He couldn't stop taking the medicine. Ning Shuema simply wanted to give him a bowl of medicine to wake him up. However, since she was willing to risk everything and reveal her identity, she naturally had to achieve her goal. Alright, now that you've lured me here, shouldn't you release the little Qilin? Shuilan glanced at Kirin, who was inside the enchantment. Momo, you're very attentive to it. Of course it's my friend. Ning Shuemo replied without hesitation. Now, the little Qilin wasn't just a simple friend of hers. She already regarded it as her family. Shuilan's eyes darkened. She treated a pet better than she treated him. Was this woman's heart made of iron? He had done so much for her, but she was still repulsed by him, and what did this stupid Kirin do for her? What else could it do besides being a hindrance? And she treated it so well. Chapter 1272. Shuilan's fingers slowly clenched, and the barrier next to him also began to shrink as if it was being clenched. Kirin, who was inside, was about to be squeezed by the barrier. Once it was squeezed, it was likely that Kirin would be squeezed into a pile of skin. Shuilan, stop. Ning Shuema's complexion changed and she rushed over. Shuilan raised his hand and took advantage of the situation to twist her arm and push her back against the barrier. He leaned over and looked down at her. Momo, you don't even recognize me right now, so what qualifications do you have to ask me to stop? This position was too embarrassing. Ning Shuema subconsciously wanted to push him away, but in the end she stopped and steeled her heart, allowing him to embrace her. Taking a light breath, she said, Shuilan, I've already said that I'm Ning Shuemo right now, not Shui Yimo. I don't want to be anyone's substitute, even if it's a substitute from my previous life. If you always treat me as her, I'll feel very uncomfortable. This sentence seemed to have the meaning of admitting defeat. Shui Yilan's eyes slightly lit up. Momo, if I don't treat you as her, will you accept me? Accept my ass. He clearly treated her as Shui Yimo. If he didn't treat her as Shui Yimo with his temperament, how could he be so submissive in front of her? Moreover, she didn't like his temperament, so no matter how well he treated her, she didn't feel anything. There was also a strange point. Ning Xuema was obviously someone who cared about appearances. She had always been very polite to handsome men, but when it came to Shui Yilan facing such a rare and super handsome man, she didn't have the slightest feeling. Not only did she not have any feelings, it seemed that from the first time they met, she had a strange feeling towards him. It was like disgust, like disappointment. That complex feeling was something that even she couldn't describe. However, every time she saw Shui Yilan, she couldn't help but feel annoyed. She didn't want to be nice to him. Hong Ti had already fainted when Shui Yilan appeared, but she was after all a Devil Realm Phoenix who had cultivated for 100 years after Nirvana. At this moment she finally woke up. When she saw her master being held in the arms of a red-clothed person, she instantly exploded, "You pervert, let go of her." Shui Yilan seemed to have just noticed Hong Ti, and a murderous aura flashed through his eyes. He raised his hand and gathered a red light, wanting to send Hong Ti on her way. Ning Xuema grabbed his sleeve and raised her eyes. "You can't." Shui Yilan raised his eyebrows, looked at Hong Ti and then looked at Ning Xuema. He teased, "Why? This is my child? But this seems to be a phoenix. Kid, you big head." Nothing had happened between her and Shui Yilan, so where did this child come from? Ning Xuema leaned on Shui Yilan's arms and secretly gave Hong Ti a look, telling her to quickly fly out and spread the news. As long as she spread the news, it would be fine. Hong Ti was indeed her battle pet in her previous life. Their minds were very connected. With just one look from Ning Xuema, Hong Ti knew what she meant. Her figure rose up and instantly turned into a phoenix, flying out of the cave like lightning. Shui Yilan chuckled, and with a backhand, a red light followed behind. Hong Ti was hit the moment she flew out of the cave. She let out a mournful cry and couldn't fly anymore. She fell to the ground powerlessly, struggled for a while and fainted. Ning Xuema's heart sank. She struggled forward. "Hong Ti." Shui Yilan pulled her back and patted her head. He faintly sighed. "Momo, this phoenix is too naughty. It's useless to keep it. How about we give birth to a little snow flood dragon?" Chapter 1273. Ning Xuema secretly rolled her eyes in his arms. Who wants to have a snow dragon with him? She doesn't care about that. The snow shark king that she met in the ice field popped up in her mind. That giant head, that ferocious face, those dense fangs. Then she looked at Shui Yilan again. Her body stiffened and all the amazement disappeared. No matter how beautiful he was in his human form, his original body was so ugly. It was really disillusioning, okay? "Momo, what are you thinking about?" Shui Yilan looked down at her and felt that she was looking at him strangely. After a pause, he seemed to have guessed something. "Momo, have you seen a snow shark before?" Ning Xuema was expressionless. "Yes, I have. It was very mighty and majestic. Its fangs were very thick and strong and its eyes were very bright." Shui Yilan? Was she describing a snow shark? Shui Yilan narrowed his eyes and suddenly smiled. "Momo, we have known each other for so long, but I have never let you see my original body. Are you curious?" Ning Xuema shook her head decisively. "Not curious." "Well, you are so vain, so it's reasonable that you don't want to show your original body. I can understand." Shui Yilan. Was she disdaining his original body because it was ugly? He suddenly pressed a few points on Ning Xuema's body and sealed her acupoints. Then he put her on a clean rock beside him. "Momo, look at me. This is the original appearance of your future husband." A faint golden light flashed from his body and covered his whole body. When the golden light dissipated, a snow-white flood dragon appeared on the spot. Its body was long and streamlined, and its silver scales were shining like snow. Its head was a little like a dragon's, but it lacked a horn. The horn was in the middle of its head, and it was as exquisite as crystal. Its branches were shaped like antlers, but they were much sharper than antlers. She had a pair of slanted phoenix eyes, and the shape of her eyes was extremely beautiful. Coupled with her long eyelashes, when she turned slightly, she was overflowing with radiance, like the rippling waters of a lake. Its four paws were on the ground and it stood there with its head held high. The end of its tail was in the shape of a flame, and there was a pair of snow-white wings gently flapping on both sides of its body. It looked both mighty and beautiful. Ning Xuema, was this a snow shark? This was the real snow shark. How could a snow shark be so beautiful? What the hell was with that ugly snow shark she saw on the ice field? Which of these two had a sudden genetic mutation? The snow mermaid turned in a circle. What do you think? Isn't it beautiful? Ning Xuema tried to hold back, but she couldn't. Shui Lan, your snow shark's genes are mutated, right? The snow shark I saw on the ice field didn't look like you. That's not a snow shark at all. The snow shark snorted. It's just that the people in this world are ignorant. They call those ugly creatures snow sharks. It's a disgrace to the snow shark race. Then, are all the snow sharks like you in their original forms? More or less the same. However, they're not as good looking as me. I'm the king of the snow shark race. Shui Yilan replied proudly. Ning Xuema couldn't help but sigh in her heart. They were both the king of the snow shark race, but why was there such a huge difference? The flood dragon moved to Ning Xuema's side and rubbed its head against the corner of Ning Xuema's clothes. Its eyes were as clear as water in autumn. Momo, after seeing my original form, do you think you can marry me? Ning Xuema. Chapter 1274. Ning Xuema was speechless. She didn't want to marry a beast, however. She really didn't expect that Shui Yilan's original body would be so beautiful. It was even more beautiful than Kirin and Little Phoenix. She couldn't help but reach out and touch his horn. It felt good to the touch, as if she was touching a piece of warm and smooth jade. Ning Xuema couldn't help but touch it a few more times. Ning Xuema suddenly noticed that the snow shark's tail was excitedly swinging back and forth like a banana leaf fan. Ning Xuema was speechless. Ning Xuema liked pets, especially round and cute pets. Shui Yilan's original body occupied two of them, which made Ning Xuema feel a little conflicted. She actually really didn't want to be enemies with such a beautiful creature. A golden light flashed from the flood dragon's body, and it transformed into Shui Yilan, who was wearing a fiery red robe. He stooped down and carried Ning Xuema in his arms. While he was at it, he opened her acupoints and said, Momo, look. You are the nine-tailed divine fox and I am the mighty snow shark. We should be a match made in heaven. We should be together. As for Shinjuli, he's just a god. He originally had a human body, so he's not a good match for you. Ning Xuemo raised her eyes. Shinjuli is a god? In the memories of Shui Emo that Shui Yilan had given her, she didn't seem to know Shinjuli's true identity. Shui Yilan's eyes turned cold. Yes. He's the only god left in the ancient times, the only god alive in this world. Ning Xuema was speechless. So Shinjuli had such a high status. When she heard his real name, she thought it was funny that there was actually someone with the surname, God. It turned out that he was really a god, but he used his surname to represent his identity. She already knew that the system of this world was divided into humans, beasts, demons, devils, immortals, and gods. Humans could cultivate to become immortals, but they could also degenerate into devils. Beasts could cultivate to become demons, immortals, or devils. Only gods could not be promoted just by cultivating. They were born from the heavens and earth. They had no parents and were above all other species. It had always only existed in legends. She didn't expect it to be real, and she even met one. She really didn't know if this was her fortune or misfortune. No wonder he said that he had no parents and made her think that he was an orphan whose parents died early. It turned out that he was a god. Looks like I wasn't wrong to call him Great God. The image of him and Yunshi holding hands flashed across his mind, and his heart twisted. If Shinjuli was a god, then what were his two companions, Yunshi and Rongyue Tianlan? Was he also a god? At this moment, her thoughts drifted far, far away. When she came back to her senses, Shui Yilan lifted her chin forcefully. His eyes darkened, and there seemed to be a trace of red light flashing past. His voice was still as gentle as water, but the strength in his hand was almost crushing Ning Xuema's bones. Momo, answer me. Answer what? Ning Xuemo raised her eyebrows and looked at him. She was distracted just now, so she didn't hear what he said at all. Also, she hated it when people pinched her chin. She raised her hand and slapped it down. You're hurting me. Her palm hit his wrist unceremoniously, and she could almost hear the soft sound of his bones breaking. Shui Yilan didn't have any intention of letting go, but he loosened his grip a little. You haven't answered me yet. No matter what he asked her to answer, it definitely wouldn't be anything good. It was nothing more than forcing her to marry him. Chapter 1275. Whatever he wanted her to answer, it was definitely nothing good. It was nothing more than forcing her to marry him. Ning Xuema smiled faintly. Little Lan Shan, you've only reincarnated once and you've already learned to force me like this? Shui Yilan's movements seemed to stiffen. Finally he let go and hugged Ning Xuema even tighter. He put his chin on her neck and whispered, "Momo, I just missed you. How much of your memories have you recovered? Momo, I don't think you should treat me like this." Ning Xuema faintly sighed and didn't say anything. Some of the memories that Shui Yilan had instilled in her, she felt as if she had personally experienced them. Whenever she thought of them she would feel distressed. Some of them, however, seemed to have nothing to do with her. It was like reading a book and remembering the contents of the story, but she didn't feel the same way. Moreover, she didn't want Shui Yimo's memories at all. Therefore, as soon as those memories surfaced, she would slap them away in the Mariana Trench. Her face was forced to be buried in his chest, so he couldn't see her expression. "Momo, don't sigh. My heart will ache." Shui Yilan stroked her long black hair and buried her even tighter in his arms. Ning Xuema didn't say anything. She just stood there quietly, letting him hug her tightly. Shui Yilan smelled the quiet fragrance in his arms and felt the warmth of the soft jade in his arms. His heart suddenly felt incomparably peaceful and satisfied. In fact, what he had always wanted was for Shui Yimo to quietly be buried in his arms like this. The two of them would hug each other until the end of time. He whispered in her ear, "Momo, do you know how much your heart ached when Shinjuli took away your virginity? I desperately wanted to take you back. I didn't hesitate to open the gates of hell, a method that could kill 1,000 enemies but also injure 800 people. I really used all the methods I could think of, but I still couldn't defeat him. When I was seriously injured, I didn't feel any pain. However, when I saw your indifferent expression, my heart really hurt. It hurt so much that I wanted to dig it out." There was a trace of hurt in his voice. Ning Xuema's heart sank as she listened to his words. Shui Yilan was indeed sincere to her, and she was also very moved, but if he didn't love her, it was useless for him to force it. She might have loved him in her previous life, but in this life she really had no feelings for him. She had once felt apologetic towards him, but after being imprisoned by him for 10 years, this apologetic feeling had vanished into thin air. His love was too crazy. She couldn't afford it, nor did she want it. Ning Xuema lightly sighed before finally spitting out those words, "Lan Shan, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I can't return your affection. I'm sorry, but in order to escape, I have to kill you." She placed her hands on his back and hugged him, returning his embrace. He secretly chanted an incantation to summon the Ame Piercer, intending to deal a fatal blow to Shui Yilan. She knew what she was doing was despicable, but she had no other choice. If she didn't do it, Shui Yilan might just lock her back in the Demon Palace and never let her out again. She was unable to accept Shui Yilan, and even more unable to accept his twisted feelings. So if she wasn't locked up until she died, then he would die. Shui Yilan didn't seem to notice her small movements. His body slightly stiffened as he lowered his eyes to look at her. This was the first time she had apologized to him. Did she finally regret it? Did she regret leaving with Shinjuli? He turned her face over and stared at her. "Momo, let's get married, okay?" The Ame Piercer inched closer and closer to Shui Yilan's back. Ning Xuema only sighed, "Can I say no?" Chapter 1276. "So you agree?" Shui Yilan's eyes lit up. Looking at his shining eyes, Ning Xuema suddenly felt sorry for him. Her fingers that were controlling the Ame Piercer paused for a moment. However, it would be cruel to herself if she felt sorry for him at this moment. Ning Xuema closed her eyes slightly and the Ame Piercer pierced toward Shui Yilan's back like lightning. This move of hers was silent and as fast as lightning. It was also very close to Shui Yilan. Logically speaking, Shui Yilan had no time to dodge. However, she didn't expect that Shui Yilan would wave his sleeve at this critical moment. The Ame Piercer that was about to pierce into his back suddenly stopped. He turned his hand and held the Ame Piercer in his hand. The Ame Piercer was already psychic. Naturally, it didn't want to fall into other people's hands. It struggled fiercely in his palm. Shui Yilan sneered and chopped down with his palm. A golden light flashed and the slender Ame Piercer broke in half. Half of it fell to the ground while the other half was still in Shui Yilan's hand. Ning Xuema knew something was wrong when he waved his sleeve. She pushed out both of her palms toward Shui Yilan's chest. The might of her psychokinesis-filled attack was not small, so Shui Yilan could only let go. Ning Xuemo retreated several zhang and landed on a mountain rock. Then, she could only watch helplessly as he destroyed her Ame Piercer. The moment the Ame Piercer broke, her heart also seemed to break. This pair of Ame Piercers was given to her by the Almighty. She had always treasured them more than anything else. She didn't expect that one of them would be destroyed and the other one would be left. Did this mean that they were destined to not be a couple? Shui Yilan held the broken emae piercer and stared at her. Do you really want to kill me? At this time, Ning Xuema knew that it was useless to deny it. She raised her head and said, yes. I don't want to be imprisoned by you anymore. Shui Yilan looked at her without saying a word. His crimson robe was particularly bright in the surrounding fog. Ning Xuema's heart tightened under his gaze. She watched as his fingers clenched into fists under his sleeves. She watched as his sleeves fluttered without any wind, as if they were filled with wind and were dancing fiercely. He was truly furious. Ning Xuema's fingers tightened around the remaining emae piercer. She heaved a sigh of relief. She hoped that he would fall out with her and they would have a real fight. Even if she died in his hands, it would be better than him being so affectionate to her and forcing her. That way she wouldn't feel guilty. Shui Yilan, wake up. I'm not Shui Yilan, I'm Ning Xuema. Either you and I fight and kill me or you let me go. I won't let you imprison me again. Ning Xuema took a deep breath and spoke clearly. Yes, you're not her. Shui Yilan finally opened his mouth. His eyes were as deep as a well that could swallow everything. She can't bear to treat me like this. Ning Xuema didn't say anything. It seemed that this fight was unavoidable. She was already prepared to fight with her life on the line. Although she doesn't often smile at me when she's cold, she'll often snuggle in my arms and let me hold her. She'll lie on my lap and let me do her hair for her and put on a garland for her. In order to save me, she'll risk everything to assassinate someone who's much stronger than her. She won't hesitate to pay with her own life. And you're a heartless woman. I've treated you so well, but you only think of another man. My efforts are only exchanged for your indifference. You even want to kill me. Chapter 1277. Ning Xuema looked at his pair of dark green eyes slowly turning red, and her fingers clenched. I said I'm Ning Xuema. Even if you pour Shui Yimo's memories into my mind, it's useless. Momo, I'll completely turn you into her. Shui Yilan chuckled and his voice became gentle. Momo, I'll truly summon you back. Ning Xuema. A bad premonition suddenly arose in her heart, and she suddenly took a step forward. Hey you, Shui Yilan waved his sleeve and a wave of light was emitted. The unconscious Kirin and Little Phoenix were surrounded by a bright red barrier and lifted up. They were suspended at Shui Yilan's side. Ning Xuema's complexion changed. Shui Yilan, what are you doing? Don't implicate the innocent in our grudges. Ning Xuema, I'll give you two choices. First, you and I get married and I'll release these two little guys. Second, you and I have a falling out and I'll kill these two. Shui Yilan's words were straightforward. Seeing Ning Xuema's pale complexion, he added, you know my methods. No matter what I kill, I'll kill it cleanly and I won't even leave their souls behind. Ning Xuema. Shui Yilan looked at his slender jade-like fingers and slightly bent them. I'll count to 3, and if you still haven't made a decision by the time I count to 3, I'll help you make a decision. You should know that my barrier is the Blood Fiend barrier, and as long as I really clench my hand, they'll be completely squeezed to death. Ning Xuema. Shui Yilan, if you really kill them, then our friendship is over. I don't care. Shui Yilan smiled coldly and counted again. 2. His fingers were already half clenched. Kirin and Phoenix, who were unconscious in the enchantment, were pressed together. Although they were not awake, their wrinkled faces showed that they were in pain. I choose 1. Ning Xuema did not wait for him to count to 3 before she spoke. Shui Yilan didn't expect her to be so straightforward. He thought that she would struggle with all her might and try her best to bargain with him. Then she would wait for him to count to 3 in fear. If she was really helpless, she would agree with him like a guillotine. It felt like he had just prepared a horror movie, but before the most exciting part was cut off by the audience. It made him feel an inexplicable sense of weightlessness as if he had stepped on air. Do you really agree? He stared into her eyes, trying to read the difference in her expression. Ning Xuema clapped her hands and asked him, did you give me any other choice? However, I also have a request. Alright, tell me. I agree to marry you. You have to let Little Apple and Hong Ti go right now. Shui Yilan smiled. I want you to marry me first before I let them go. Ning Xuema said coldly, my request is that you let them go right here. Otherwise, I'd rather fight you to the death. Shui Yilan's eyes flashed and he suddenly laughed. Alright. I'll let them go right here. However, you have to marry me right here. Ning Xuema. She looked around. There were only rocks and fog. There wasn't even a blade of grass. Even if she wanted to use grass as incense, she couldn't. She smiled. If you don't mind, I don't care. Wasn't it just a wedding? She didn't care. Chapter 1278. After the wedding ceremony, she could still go back on her words. In modern times, even if there was a marriage certificate, there were still many divorces. What's more, it was just a wedding ceremony. She would just treat it as playing house. As long as she could save Kirin and Hong Ti, she didn't mind bowing a few times. She glanced around and said, "Can you find a few sharp stones to represent the incense?" Shui Yilan's lips twitched slightly. Her reaction was always out of his expectations, which almost made him speechless. After a pause, he said, "Momo, how can our wedding be so simple? I will definitely give you an unforgettable wedding." Coral was the roof and red jade was the wall. A red carpet led straight to the main hall that looked like a crystal palace. There were countless people outside the main hall, squeezing and jostling, as if they were guests who came to watch the ceremony. A red wedding sedan with pearl tassels stopped quietly beside Ning Xuema. Shui Yilan magically produced a red wedding dress and handed it to her. "Good girl, get into the sedan and change your clothes." Ning Xuema was simply stunned by this scene. Shui Yilan's ability to build a house was not much worse than Xinjiuli's. What was more rare was his taste. Everything was bright red like fire, and the red color almost blinded her eyes. Ning Xuema originally liked red, but now she suddenly felt that she seemed to have a psychological trauma towards red. She probably wouldn't wear red clothes for decades. She took the wedding dress. The soft and smooth material felt good to the touch. Ning Xuema was a little afraid to wear it. Damn it, was this the emperor's new clothes? It was just for her eyes. In fact, it was illusory. When she wore it, she was not wearing anything. She was naked. Even if it was not illusory, it was after all Shui Yilan casually made it. He could also make it disappear at any time. At that time she would still be naked. Although Ning Xuema had always been thick-skinned, she still found it hard to accept this. Shui Yilan was really considerate. He immediately understood Ning Xuema's unspoken concerns. "Don't worry. I prepared this wedding dress for you long ago. It's not an illusion. You can wear it without worry." "Fine." Ning Xuema held the stack of clothes and waved her hand, setting up a milky white barrier around her. Who would change their clothes in a wedding sedan? It's unlucky. This wedding sedan was also made by Shui Yilan. She didn't know what kind of perverted mechanism was installed in it. Perhaps when she was changing her clothes inside, the four sides of the sedan would scatter and she would be exposed again. It wasn't that she had too many misgivings, but that Shui Yilan was too abnormal. She had to be on guard. The enchantment she set up was as white as snow. This technique was taught to her by the Almighty, and it had a faint celestial aura. When she stood inside, Shui Yilan couldn't even see a corner of her clothes. He looked at the enchantment, and his eyes flashed with a touch of anger. There were too many imprints of Xinjiuli on her body. How could he completely remove them? "Momo, in fact, you don't have to do this. Sooner or later I will see your body. After the wedding ceremony, we will consummate our marriage." Shui Yilan's voice slowly came in. "Consummate your sister." Ning Xuema cursed in her heart. She slowly changed her clothes inside, trying to delay the time. When she was talking to Shui Yilan a moment ago, she secretly used her gossamer psychic power on Little Qilin and Little Phoenix to detoxify the poison in their bodies. Once the poison in their bodies was completely eliminated, they would be completely awake. After that, they would be able to run away. Chapter 1279. With her current martial arts, she could probably stop Shui Yilan for half an hour. This half an hour was enough for the two beasts to run very far away. At that time, she would instruct them to escape to the Sun Moon sect. Although Xinjiuli had a falling out with her, he probably wouldn't reject the two beasts too much and might even take them in. That way she wouldn't have any worries and could do what she wanted to do. A quarter of an hour passed. Shui Yilan was a bit impatient. "Momo, are you still not done? What's the rush? You should know that haste makes waste. Women need half an hour to go out and put on their makeup. What's more, I'm getting married. Naturally, I have to dress up properly." Another quarter of an hour passed. Shui Yilan pressed his palm on the milky white barrier. "Momo, there's no use in stalling for time. No one will come here. Don't even think about using others to save you. If you don't come out, I'll break this barrier." Although her barrier was quite strong, if Shui Yilan wanted to break it, it wouldn't take much effort. "Shui Yilan!" Ning Xuema shouted loudly, scaring Shui Yilan. Try and break this barrier if you dare. You keep saying that you like me, can't you even wait for this little bit of time? Ning Xuema said sternly. Shui Yilan. He secretly took a deep breath. Momo, I'll give you another quarter of an hour. If you don't come out, I'll really break the barrier and use force. At that time, we won't even need to go through the wedding ceremony, we'll go straight to the bridal chamber. Okay, so. Shui Yilan, you don't want me to go through the wedding ceremony with my hair and face dirty, right? My hair isn't good, wait a little longer. I can do your hair for you. Moreover, I can do it better than you. Shui Yilan wasn't willing to give up. That won't do. How can a bride's hair be combed by the groom before the wedding ceremony? You've waited for so many years, can't you wait for a few minutes? Shui Yilan. Alright, in order to leave a good impression he would wait a little longer. Although he was about to explode with anger from waiting. Just like that, he waited for another hour before the white barrier slowly disappeared, revealing Ning Xuema's figure. The moment Shui Yilan saw her appearance, the corner of his lips twitched fiercely. As expected, she was wearing the wedding dress that he had given her. However, the order in which she wore it was a little messy. A few of the tassels on the dress were tucked in and clanked. She had indeed combed her hair again, but it was tied into a nondescript ponytail. The phoenix coronet was crooked on top of the ponytail, and it looked like it would fall off at any moment. A few of the tassels on the phoenix coronet had been torn off, and the remaining row of tassels seemed to be in a mess. She didn't look like a well-dressed bride at all. She clearly looked like a bride who had just finished running a marathon. Ning Xuema, you did it on purpose. Shui Yilan was furious. Ning Xuema looked innocent. It's you who rushed me. According to our tradition, the bride needs half a day to dress up. Shui Yilan was also a perfectionist. How could he tolerate her dressing up like this on the wedding day? He pulled her over. Let me help you. In our place, the groom is not allowed to dress up the bride. I can do it if I want to. Shui Yilan pressed her down on a big rock and began to comb her hair. This time, Ning Xuema didn't go against him. Her gaze swept over the little Qilin and the little phoenix's bodies. Those two bodies slightly moved. They should be waking up soon. Chapter 1280. Her eyes flashed as she obediently allowed him to help her dress up. Shui Yilan's hands were extremely nimble. In just a moment he had already tied her hair into a bridal bun and put on the phoenix coronet. Then he bent down to help her tidy up her dress. Ning Xuema looked at the top of his head in front of her eyes and secretly clenched her fingers. If she were to stab him with her sword, he would most likely not be able to dodge it. Momo, I've waited for this day for over 3,000 years. Shui Yilan's voice was calm as if he was telling a fact. However, if one listened carefully, they would find that his voice was slightly trembling. It was clear that he was really excited. Ning Xuema's heart felt as if it was being squeezed by something and the email piercer in her sleeve withdrew. After all, this person was someone she loved in her previous life and had waited for her for over 3,000 years. Although she didn't have any feelings for him right now when he was gently helping her tidy up her dress, she really couldn't bring herself to plot against him. She bitterly smiled in her heart. Originally, no matter what she did, she was always straightforward and decisive. She could be considered a person who could kill people without them noticing. When she made a move, she rarely had the heart to do so. She didn't think that she would have the heart to do so now. What she didn't notice was that the corner of Shui Yilan's mouth seemed to hook up as he tidied up her skirt. A gratified smile seemed to flash by. His Momo wasn't completely heartless towards him. Finally, he finished tidying up her body. When he looked at her again, she was sitting there in her wedding dress. Her eyelashes were slightly lowered and the red wedding dress made her face look even more delicate. Shui Yilan reached out his hand. Momo, come, I'll carry you into the sedan. Before his fingertips could even touch her wrist, she smiled. I'll do it myself. Her figure rose and fluttered into the sedan. The curtain of the sedan hung down, blocking her figure. Shui Yilan slowly lowered his wrist and smiled. Without saying anything, he raised his sleeve and the bridal sedan flew into the air. There were 8 shadows carrying the sedan in front and behind the bridal sedan. There was also a group of people playing music and flags. It was like a wedding procession in the mortal world. The shadows surrounded the bridal sedan in the center and slowly patrolled in the air. Ning Xuema naturally saw those shadows in the bridal sedan chair. She couldn't help but rub her forehead. This didn't look like a normal marriage at all. It was clearly a ghost marriage. However, Shui Yilan really put in a lot of effort. These shadows were all little ghosts, and they still maintained their human appearances. Other than the fact that their bodies were translucent, they were no different from normal people. She raised her head and looked at Shuilan, who was riding a horse in front of the sedan chair. She didn't know when he had put on a groom's robe, but he looked even more unrestrained and elegant. She didn't know why, but Ning Xuema unexpectedly felt a touch of sadness and loneliness from him, causing her heart to tighten. Shenjuli's figure flashed through his mind and his heart clenched. That person didn't care about her anymore. He also had someone else in his heart. What was she still holding on for? Even if she was lucky enough to escape this time, would she have to escape to the Sun Moon sect and ask him for help? He would definitely be very proud, and Yunxi might be very proud too. She seemed to see the two of them looking at her proudly, saying that she was nothing without Shinjoli and that she didn't even have the ability to protect herself. No, she didn't want to see them like that. She didn't want to go back to the Sun Moon sect to see him and Yunxi naked and then be ordered around by him again. However, if she escaped, where else could she escape to if not the Sun Moon sect? Shuilan was like a ghost that wouldn't leave. As long as she was alone, he would easily catch her. Chapter 1281. So tiring. It was really tiring for her to be the young lady of the Marquis Mansion. She was so tired that she didn't want to do it anymore. If only she had returned to the modern world when she woke up. While she was lost in thought, the bridal sedan chair had already circled around the nearby sky. There was a faint joyous sound in the air, which was quite like it was. The bridal sedan chair slowly descended to the ground. The curtain was lifted and a white jade hand reached in. Momo, get off the sedan chair. According to the rules, Ning Xuema should be supporting him to get off the sedan chair, but she preferred to rely on herself at this time. Her figure rose up, floated out of the sedan chair and landed on the ground. Then she strode towards the red carpet. Let's go. Shuilan's hand was frozen in place. Watching her stride forward, the blue veins on his forehead jumped. Such a maverick bride was really rare. He took 2 steps forward and was about to catch up with her footsteps when he suddenly saw Kirin and Little Phoenix, who had been lying not far away, moving their bodies. He paused and was about to do something when a red shadow flashed in front of him. Ning Xuema landed beside him and held his hand. Why are you walking so slowly? Shouldn't you be holding my hand to go in? Her red figure blocked his line of sight when he looked back at Kirin and Little Phoenix. Her small hand was holding his hand tightly. This was the first time she took the initiative to hold his hand. Shuilan couldn't bear to get rid of her hand. He was a little distracted when he heard a strange sound behind him. His heart was moved. Just as he was about to slightly pull Ning Xuema away to take a look, Ning Xuema's body suddenly tilted and fell into his embrace. Hugging a soft, warm and fragrant body, his sweetheart even took the initiative to throw herself into his arms. Shuilan's entire body stiffened. He couldn't help but raise his arms to hug her. What's wrong? Our custom is that the groom should carry the bride into the wedding hall. Ning Xuema looked at him with a pair of round eyes. She sighed bitterly in her heart. In order to save those 2 goods, she even used this trick to ask for a hug. From the corner of her eye, she saw that Kirin and Little Phoenix had slowly stood up from the ground. Both of you get lost. Hide in the Sun Moon sect. Don't drag me down. Ning Xuema transmitted her voice to Little Phoenix and Kirin. After all, the Little Phoenix was a child that had undergone nirvana, so its social experience was shallow. When it saw that Ning Xuema had fallen into Shuilan's arms, it subconsciously wanted to shout, but Kirin quickly covered its mouth and said, "If we leave now, it would be the biggest help to Master." She pulled the Little Phoenix and flew away. Where are you going? Shuilan naturally sensed the movements of the 2 beasts. He moved his sleeves and was about to shoot out something. Ning Xuema suddenly hugged his arm. You're not even willing to hug me at this time? There was some anger in her voice. Shuilan's heart softened. He pursed his lips and lifted his arms to carry her. When he looked at Kirin and Little Phoenix again, they had already disappeared into the thick fog. Shuilan looked down at her, who was like a little bird in his arms. He knew that she had thrown herself into his arms in order to save those 2, but he was still slightly drunk. All he wanted in this life was to be able to hug her as he wished, to hold her, to see her smile at him, and to rely on each other like this for a lifetime. In his previous life, he had exhausted all his schemes and all he wanted was this day. However, he used the wrong method and caused her to die miserably and reincarnate. Now she was finally going to go through the wedding ceremony with him. After the ceremony, she would be his. No one could take her away from him. Chapter 1282. He carried her and walked forward with large strides. The surrounding little ghosts cheered as if it was a real thing. The red crystal palace was filled with countless crystal lanterns hanging high up in the wedding hall. There were even more guests in the wedding hall, and it was as lively as a raging inferno. There were even little ghosts as ceremonial officials. When Shui Yilan carried Ning Xuema to the altar in the middle of the hall, the little ghost immediately shouted, "First bow to the heavens and earth." Shui Yilan held Ning Xuema's hand and bowed down. Ning Xuema secretly calculated the time it took for the two to escape. It seemed like only 10 minutes had passed. It seems like she had to bow to the heavens and earth. Second bow to the devil god. The little ghost shouted again. Ning Xuema stopped bowing and asked, "Isn't it the second bow to the elders?" Shui Yilan smiled and said, "Momo, we are devils, so we naturally have to bow to the devil god. The devil god is equivalent to our elders." "I'm not a devil, I'm a human." Ning Xuema tried to stall for time. She had a bad feeling in her heart, as if she bowed down, something would be irreversible. "Momo, you were a devil in your previous life and I have always been a devil. Even if you are a human now, you are married to the devil empress. Naturally, you have to bow to the devil god." Shui Yilan explained to her. "Are you telling me to follow the chicken after marrying the chicken or dog after marrying the dog?" "Shui Yilan, I was once your master and you want me to follow you?" Ning Xuema gave a smile that was not a smile. She seized every opportunity to stall for time and argued with Shui Yilan. Shui Yilan said a few words to her in a soft voice. In the end, he became impatient and coldly smiled. "Momo, if you don't bow to me, I will immediately capture those two and execute them. Although they've been running for a quarter of an hour, it's still a piece of cake for me to catch them. I forgot to tell you that I've set up a barrier around the entrance of the valley. Do you think they can break out of that barrier now?" Ning Xuema. This bastard actually did things so flawlessly. While she was in a daze, Shui Yilan had already grabbed her hand and pulled her to his side. He pulled with a lot of strength. Ning Xuema was caught off guard and fell into his arms. Shui Yilan took advantage of the situation to hug her and kiss her forehead. "Momo, don't delay the time. 2 more bows will be enough." The imp next to him shouted again, "Second bow to the god fiend." Ning Xuema also secretly accumulated psychokinesis in her palms and made up her mind to attack him twice when he lowered his head. Shui Yilan was just about to bow down when he suddenly heard a faint cracking sound from outside. His expression changed. Ning Xuema took the opportunity to ask, "What's that sound?" "Nothing. It's your 2 silly pets that bumped into the barrier. Come, let's bow down." Shui Yilan grabbed Ning Xuema's wrist and pulled her into his arms. Then he forced her to bend down. Whoosh! A gust of wind suddenly blew. The wind was so strong that it blew apart the wedding hall that Shui Yilan had painstakingly created. The fragments spun in the wind and in the blink of an eye, they turned into thousands of sharp objects and shot towards Shui Yilan. Shui Yilan's expression changed drastically. He couldn't care about anything else and waved his sleeves to set up barriers. However, the barrier that he had hastily set up was obviously no match for these things that were blown towards him. Only a series of popping sounds could be heard as the fragments smashed through the layers of barriers like a mighty dragon. Shui Yilan could only desperately retreat. He didn't even have time to grab Ning Xuema and retreat together. Chapter 1283. His body flipped a few times in the air and he finally got rid of the debris. He landed on a piece of bluestone and when he looked up again he suddenly clenched his fists. Shinjuli. It's Shinjuli again. Is this god's soul still lingering around? Shinjuli's white robe fluttered as he stood not far away. His face was as calm as water and his eyes were like the dark sea. Although he looked calm on the outside, there were turbulent waves inside. When Ning Xuema saw him, her heart beat wildly. She opened her mouth and the words, "Great God," almost escaped her mouth. After letting out a sigh of relief, she was filled with joy, excitement, sadness, anger, resentment, all kinds of emotions intertwined in her heart, and even she couldn't tell what she was feeling at that moment. She stood there and for a moment she forgot how to react. Shinjuli glanced at her. His gaze was as cold as ice and it made Ning Xuema shiver. Half of her joy and excitement disappeared. "Shinjuli, what are you doing here again? Are you here to witness our wedding?" After the initial shock, Shui Yilan finally reacted. "Where is the wedding?" Shinjuli asked coldly. Shui Yilan. The wedding hall that he had meticulously decorated had been blown to pieces. Shinjuli, so what if you destroyed my wedding hall? She and I have already gone through the wedding ceremony. She is already my wife. Shui Yilan raised his hand, wanting to pull Ning Xuema over. Before Ning Xuema could react, Xinjiuli flicked his sleeve, and before Shui Yilan could pull the string, Ning Xuema's arm was cut off at the waist. Ning Xuema also took a step back. When she heard Shui Yilan's words, she frowned. She was about to say that he was spouting nonsense, but when she looked up, her eyes met with Xinjiuli's. Ning Xuema, you went through the wedding ceremony with him? Xinjiuli's voice was as cold as ice, and it made one's heart turn cold. Especially when he said the words, Ning Xuema, it was cold and without any warmth. The image of Xinjiuli and Yunxi cuddling together flashed in Ning Xuema's mind. Her heart felt stifled of it, and she crossed her arms and leaned against a large rock without a word, ignoring of Xinjiuli's question. Who she went through the wedding ceremony with Xinjiuli? Xinjiuli's face looked even worse. He of the wedding hall of the wedding ceremony. It had only been a few days since they last saw each other, but she almost went through a wedding ceremony with two men. Couldn't she be more obedient? Shui Yilan's sharp senses sensed the undercurrent between the two of them, and he was delighted. Momo, come here. You're already my wife. You don't have to be afraid of him anymore. Ning Xuema glanced at Xinjiuli. His face looked like it was about to rain. The sky became even gloomier and the surrounding fog became thicker. She's not your wife. The disciple of Xinjiuli will never marry a devil. Xinjiuli said word by word. Suddenly he waved his sleeve and Ning Xuema, who was watching from the side, was suddenly covered by a cover. What's this? In that instant, Ning Xuema felt as if she had been locked in a transparent bottle. She was stunned for a moment, and she subconsciously touched the surface of the cover. It was as slippery as a bottle. Let her go. Shui Yilan was furious. He pounced over, and a dazzling golden light smashed into the cover. Poof! With a muffled sound, the golden light disappeared, and the cover remained motionless. Xinjiuli, we've already gone through the wedding ceremony. Even if you don't admit it, she's still my wife. You can't break us apart. Shui Yilan was furious. Chapter 1284. What responded to him was Xinjiuli's big move. Xinjiuli's cold and indifferent voice sounded, I don't approve. Shui Yilan was speechless. He really didn't expect that Xinjiuli, who had existed since ancient times, would actually say such shameless words. While dodging Xinjiuli's killing move, he sneered, Isn't God the most impartial and unbiased? How can he say such shameless words? Xinjiuli's white clothes fluttered in the cold wind. In response to Shui Yilan's reprimand, he only replied with one sentence, You have misunderstood God. Shui Yilan was speechless. First of all, he could not find a way to stop Xinjiuli. Second of all, Xinjiuli was obviously trying to kill him. Xinjiuli's attack was so powerful that he could barely breathe. If he was distracted for even a moment, he would be in danger of being chopped into pieces. Two figures, one red and one white, were fighting in the air. The two of them had fought more than once. Shui Yilan also boasted that he had some understanding of Xinjiuli's kung fu. The last time he fought with Xinjiuli, he had fought for more than 100 moves. Although he was defeated in the end, it showed that he and Xinjiuli still had the ability to fight to the death. Since that time, in order to quickly improve his skills, he even used forbidden techniques during his cultivation. His kung fu had improved very quickly during this period of time. He had already risen from heaven rank level 2 to heaven rank level 3. He thought that this time he would definitely be able to have a real bloody battle with Xinjiuli. Even if he couldn't win, he would be able to injure him or something. What he didn't expect was that Xinjiuli's kung fu was far beyond his expectations. The last time they fought, Xinjiuli didn't show his real kung fu at all. He didn't use his full strength either. His purpose that time seemed to be to force Shui Yilan away and test his kung fu. Therefore, Shui Yilan was able to fight with Xinjiuli for more than 100 moves. But this time, Xinjiuli really wanted to kill him. Every move he sent out was like a landslide or a tsunami. It forced Shui Yilan to defend himself, let alone fight back. The protective enchantment, protective barriers, and other things he set up were quickly broken when they came in contact with Xinjiuli's moves. It was as easy as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. But after 10 moves, Shui Yilan had already suffered a series of dangerous moves. He was shaken to the point that he spat out several mouthfuls of blood. No. He was no match for this great deity at all. Shui Yilan painfully recognized this point. He was only the king of monsters. Including his previous life before he was sealed, he had lived for less than 10,000 years. But Xinjiuli was a god that had existed since ancient times. He didn't know how long he had lived. Even Shinjoli himself didn't know how long he had lived. Shinjoli's kung fu had probably already surpassed the heaven realm and entered the legendary god realm. He and Shinjoli weren't on the same starting line at all. Inside the bottle, Ning Xuema watched the battle unfold. Her heart was palpitating with fear. She remembered that when Gong Gong and Zhu Rong were fighting, the world collapsed, mountains and rivers collapsed, and a big hole was poked in the sky. Nuwa was forced to refine stones to mend the sky. She always thought that it was just an exaggerated legend. She didn't expect to see the real version here. Sand and pebbles were sent flying, and the ground beneath their feet cracked open one after another. Large rocks were tumbling all over the ground, and the entire valley had completely changed. Ning Xuema was glad that Shinjoli had locked her in this bottle, in advance. Otherwise she would definitely be affected and hit by the sky full of stones. Chapter 1285. Suddenly, she seemed to have thought of something and her expression changed. Oh no. She didn't know if Kirin and Little Phoenix had escaped from the valley or not. Shijua was definitely waiting outside the valley. Would they be affected? Would they be injured because of this? Or even lose their lives because of this? No way. She couldn't implicate them anymore. Seeing Shinjili forming another ball of light in his palm, she was also someone who knew what was good for her. She knew that once he released another move that could destroy heaven and earth, she didn't care whether Shui Yilan would be injured or not. However, she was afraid that the entire valley would be turned into fine powder. Shijue and the two beasts outside would also be annihilated. Stop! She slapped the wall of the bottle, and shouted. Her whole body was almost lying on the wall of the bottle. After a few minutes of effort, the large stones and trees that were flying in the sky finally landed on the ground. There was still dust in the air. Shui Yilan had disappeared. Shinjili stood there with his sleeves slightly drooping and his face faintly pale. Ning Xuema's shout just now was very effective. It made Shinjili subconsciously pause, and that move that could destroy heaven and earth was not released. Shui Yilan, who was forced to the point of having nowhere to go, took the opportunity to escape. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared without a trace. Shinjili didn't chase after him. His gaze fell on Ning Xuema's face in the cover, and there seemed to be an undercurrent in his eyes. Ning Xuema was frightened by his gaze. It was the first time she saw Shinjili reveal such an expression, God's coercion. Under his coercion, Ning Xuema's heart tightened into a ball and her scalp went numb. Why was he looking at her like that? She didn't do anything wrong. Ning Xuema took a deep breath and hit the wall of the cage in fear. Let me out. Damn it, she felt like a fly trapped in a glass bottle, unable to fly out no matter how hard she tried. Shinjili waved his sleeves, and the cover around Ning Xuema finally disappeared. Ning Xuema was lying on top of it, and the sudden disappearance of the cover caused her body to sway, and she almost fell down. She quickly steadied herself with the stake. She looked at the completely changed scenery around her. The mountains had collapsed, the valleys had changed shape, and everything was no longer the same as before. She was still thinking about Shiju and the two beasts. She turned around and ran out the moment she regained her freedom. She wanted to see how they were doing. She had just taken 2 steps when her wrist was suddenly grabbed and she was pulled back by a strong force. Where are you going? Ning Xuema almost bumped into Shinjili's chest. Her nose was filled with the faint fragrance of his body, and her heart skipped a beat. His hand tightly held her wrist, causing her wrist to hurt and her bones to almost break. She subconsciously struggled. Let go. Shinjili did not let go. He directly pulled her into his arms and looked down at her. Speak, where do you want to go? His voice was too cold as the wind on a cold day. His body seemed to be covered with ice and snow, causing Ning Xuema's heart to tremble again. Under his strong coercion, she blurted out, I'm going to see Shiju. Before she could finish her sentence, she was rudely interrupted by Shinjili. Why are you looking for him? You want to go with him again? Ning Xuema froze and suddenly raised her head to look at him. His expression was very bad, as if he had caught his wife cheating on him. He could not help but emit a divine coercion that made her unable to raise her head. Chapter 1286. What right did he have to talk to her like that? What right did he have? He and Yunshi had gone to Lover's Island for 3 days as if they were on a honeymoon. After they came back, he had lost the right to ask about her feelings. Now he was at most her master, not her lover who had once promised to live and die with her. She thought that she had gotten over it and that she no longer felt heartache. However, when she thought about it now, she still felt as if someone had smashed a sharp wooden spike into her heart. The slightest movement was excruciatingly painful. She raised her head and said stubbornly, "It's none of your business. Let go of me." Damn it, her wrist was about to be broken by him. It was so painful. Let go. Shenjuli looked at her stubbornly raised little face and narrowed his eyes. Do you really want a man that much? Ning Xuema was speechless. She was stunned by Shenjuli's words. In his eyes, she was just a crazy woman who wanted to pounce on a man? If it were another woman, she might have shouted angrily at him, "What nonsense are you talking about? You're the one who wants a man. Your whole family wants a man." However, Ning Xuema wasn't like other girls. She didn't play her cards according to common sense. She liked to anger people to death, especially when she was enraged. Therefore, she raised her head and laughed. Yes, I do want a man. So what if I want a man? I want to consummate my marriage with a man. All right. I'll fulfill your wish. Ning Xuema had just finished speaking when her whole body was abruptly pulled into his embrace. Without waiting for her to react, his lips fiercely landed on hers, directly kissing her. Ning Xuema was speechless. Her mind went blank for a moment. When she came back to her senses, she was already tightly held in his arms. He had pried open her teeth and his lips and tongue were wreaking havoc in her mouth, not letting go of a single spot. What was the meaning of this? Ning Xuema's heart almost jumped out of her chest. She wanted to push him away, but her waist was tightly wrapped around by his arms. She couldn't move her body even an inch away from him. Wu? Ning Xuema struggled, shaking her head in an attempt to get rid of him. But as soon as she moved her head, one of his hands pressed down on the back of her head, making her unable to move. His breath wreaked havoc in her nostrils, his embrace was fiery and warm, and his arms were burning hot, as if he couldn't wait to rub her into his bones. Ning Xuema couldn't breathe after being kissed by him. Suddenly she felt her eyes sting. Years ago he had kissed her like this countless times. Countless times, they were so close that there was no gap between them. During the 10 years that she had been imprisoned by Shui Yilan, she had dreamed of his return countless times. He had saved her from the fire and water, hugging and kissing her like this. She didn't know the pain of separation until she was separated. Even she didn't know how she had endured those 10 years. If it wasn't for this concern in her heart, she might not have been able to endure it. No one knew how much she longed for this embrace. She longed for it so much that her heart ached. No one could understand how disappointed and anxious she had been these days. Her emotions were all over the place every day. Even she felt that she was living like a coward, not like herself anymore. She had always prided herself on being free and easy, but she didn't expect that one day she would be like a resentful woman, full of resentment, full of grievances, crying and laughing like a child. She had always been a rational person. This time she came out with Shishi because she wanted to sort out the messy emotions in her heart. Chapter 1287. She had never really thought of giving up on the Almighty. Ning Xuema wasn't someone who gave up easily, so she wouldn't let Yunxi's scheme succeed. The Almighty belonged to her, so she couldn't give up on him just because he had lost his memories. Unless he didn't love her at all, unless he had truly fallen in love with Yunxi. Even if he had truly fallen in love with Yunxi, she had to make things clear to Shinjiuli. She had to make everything clear before she respected Shinjiuli's choice. If he still chose Yunxi, then she would let go and find a secluded place to live in seclusion until the wound in her heart was healed. Then she would come out and travel the world freely. This was her plan. However, her plan couldn't keep up with the changes. She hadn't expected that she would still fall into Shui Yilan's hands no matter how careful she had been. She hadn't expected that Shinjiuli would come at this time. She suddenly had the urge to cry as he hugged her and kissed her forcefully. Her heart was sour, sweet, bitter and resentful. It was a mix of emotions. His kiss was too forceful, as if he was venting his anger. It was also as if he had finally found a way to vent his 1,000-year-old desires. Shinjiuli felt like he was going crazy. From the moment he had met her, everything had seemed wrong. The trajectory of his life had seemed to have been distorted. He had learned from Yunxi that he had taken in many disciples. When he had returned to the Sun Moon sect after waking up, he had quietly taken in all of them. When he had seen them, he hadn't felt anything. He had only felt that he had a good eye for disciples. All of them were extremely intelligent and top-notch. Furthermore, their temperaments and personalities were quite similar to his. Then Yelu Jing had apologized to him and said that she hadn't taken good care of her little junior sister, which had led to her tragic death. Although Shinjuli had lost all his memories, he still knew his identity as a god. Since he was a god, he wouldn't really have much to do with humans. The birth, aging, illness, and death of humans were just a form of reincarnation. To him it was like floating clouds, so he wouldn't really take it to heart. Therefore he softly grunted, indicating that he understood. However, when he occasionally went to the side chamber, he had a strange feeling in his heart. It was as if he had lost something and couldn't find it. He had lost a lot of things in his life, and many of them were things that he once loved. But after a long time he no longer loved them and casually threw away many of them. Occasionally, in the middle of the night, when he thought about the things he had lost, he would feel a sense of loss. Therefore he didn't take it to heart. His days were as peaceful as water. To him, time in the mortal world was just a blink of an eye. It wasn't worth remembering anything. However, he did not expect that after meeting Ning Xuema, his state of mind would undergo a wonderful change. At first he felt that this person should be his, but she was always going in and out with a devil, which made him unhappy, so he planned to snatch her back. When he held her in his arms, he actually felt like he had regained what he had lost. Knowing that she was his disciple, he felt that it made sense. He had snatched his disciple back confidently, so there was nothing wrong with it. However, he hadn't expected that this disciple would act so unconventionally. Not only had she dared to talk to him, but she had also dared to give him a hard time. This had greatly challenged his authority as a master, so he had punished her. Chapter 1288. He had punished his other disciples even more harshly, but he had never felt that there was anything wrong with it. However, when he punished her, his heart would ache from time to time, and the strange feeling would grow stronger and stronger. This disciple had a stubborn temper and even had strange feelings for him. According to his logic, this disciple should be expelled from the sect. However, he couldn't bear to do so. The pain and loss that occasionally appeared in her eyes caused ripples in his usually calm heart. He couldn't bear it and started to give in. Seeing her happy made him happy as well. He didn't know what was wrong with him. Why would he have such feelings for his disciple? Moreover, there was nothing wrong with it. After knowing that she liked him, he didn't feel the slightest bit of disgust. In fact, he even felt gratified in his heart. Yunxi probably sensed the slight abnormality in his emotions. During a game of chess, she accidentally mentioned that he had accepted a female disciple a few hundred years ago. Not long after that female disciple entered his sect, she said that she had been his lover in his previous life and came to find him. Yunxi also said that he had a special feeling for this disciple named Yi Qingwan. Later on, she was expelled from the sect and went to establish her own sect. Shinjuli knew that he would fall asleep once every 1,000 years. When he woke up, he would forget everything about his past life. Therefore he had long forgotten everything about Yi Qingwan. At that time, Yunxi had casually mentioned that there were many people who liked Dizhua in both his previous life and this life. This Ning Xuema and Yi Qingwan should be similar in nature. Shinjuli was someone who liked to investigate. He also felt that this female disciple, Ning Xuema, was a little strange. Therefore he wanted to see if he had any special feelings for Yi Qingwan. With the Sun Moon Sect's intelligence network, it wasn't difficult to find Yi Qingwan. He quickly found out about Yi Qingwan's whereabouts. She was hiding in a deep mountain and was bitterly cultivating. Shinjuli was a man of action. He immediately went there and easily found Yi Qingwan, who was meditating at that time. He went there invisibly. He stood in front of Yi Qingwan and looked at her for a moment. He realized that this disciple's facial features resembled Ning Xuema. However, it was only when her eyes were closed. Once he opened his eyes, he would not be able to find any similarities between them. More importantly, he didn't feel anything when he saw Yi Qingwan. He even felt an instinctive disgust. He didn't know if it was because he didn't communicate with Yi Qingwan, so he thought about it and deliberately appeared in front of her. The moment Yi Qingwan saw him, she actually shrank back fiercely as if she was frightened. Then, she trembled and knelt down to greet him, calling him her disciple. Her words made Shinjuli feel even more disgusted with her. It was completely different from the feelings he had for Ning Xuema. He disappeared without saying a word, which made Yi Qingwan almost think that she was dreaming. Shinjuli finally understood that he treated his little disciple, Ning Xuema, differently. She was too good at affecting his emotions, making him uneasy and often doing things that even he himself could not understand. He didn't know how he treated this disciple before he fell asleep. He only knew that he really didn't like other men appearing by her side. He had a strange possessiveness towards her. Because Ning Xuema was like a little porcupine, the master and disciple didn't get along well. Shen Jiuli wasn't good at starting a conversation, so he felt that he probably wouldn't be able to get anything out of Ning Xuema. Chapter 1289. He had the ability to read people's memories, but that person had to be awake. He couldn't do it while they were asleep. He originally wanted to call Ning Xuema in front of him to read her memories, but he had some inexplicable scruples. It was as if he had promised someone that he wouldn't use this ability again. Therefore, this thought only appeared in his mind for a moment before he threw it aside. In order to understand the truth before he fell asleep, he called Yelu Jing over and asked him a few questions. Yelu Jing didn't know much, so he only said what he knew. But Shen Jiuli found out from these little clues that he treated this disciple very differently. He didn't raise her as a disciple, but as a daughter-in-law. He didn't understand what he was thinking in his previous life. Since he raised her as a pillow, why did he take her in as a disciple? He didn't think he had this kind of taste, but he didn't understand and didn't want to bother about it. Because he had slept too much, he had forgotten too many things. Therefore, every time Shen Jiuli woke up, he only paid attention to the current life he was in. He did not care about his past life. He found that he liked this female disciple, so he started to think about how they would get along in the future. It was also at this time that he found the demon in her body. He worked hard for her and made many connections, but he didn't expect this girl to secretly meet with another man. She even whispered to him that she wanted to leave with that man, making him lose face. He angrily left, but when he heard about Crown Prince Wang's wedding, he couldn't hold it in anymore. It wasn't easy to find out that Shiju's wife was another daughter, so he was relieved. But he didn't expect that when he found Ning Xuema again, she was actually married to Shuilan, this big demon. For the first time in his life, Shen Jiuli, who was always calm, had the desire to vomit blood. He also really wanted to kill. If it wasn't for Ning Xuema's shout, Shuilan probably would have been killed here. Shen Jiuli did not expect that Ning Xuema had the intention of saving Shuilan. She was even thinking about another man. Shen Jiuli could no longer suppress the anger he had been suppressing. Blood rushed to his head. He locked her tightly in his arms and kissed her fiercely. The more she struggled, the angrier he got, and the tighter he held her. Didn't she want a man? Didn't they want to consummate their marriage? Very well, he would fulfill her wish. 10 years ago, Ning Xuema had kissed Shen Jiuli countless times, but she had never seen him so ferocious. He sucked on her tongue until it was numb. He was probably punishing her for struggling, so he bit her lips. She let out a muffled groan. Her lips were burning and there was a hint of blood. He actually bit her. Ning Xuema was also angry. Unwilling to be outdone, she wanted to bite back. Unavoidably, she sucked on his lips and fiercely bit him back. It was strange. His lips were soft and beautiful, but she could not bite them until they bled. Unwilling to give up, she wanted to change to another place to bite. Suddenly, her body was carried by her waist. Ning Xuema's heart skipped a beat. Princess Carrie. This was Shen Jiuli's favorite way to carry her 10 years ago. She did not expect him to carry her so easily now. However, before she could react, her body was lifted into the air again. She was actually thrown out by him just like that. She jumped in fright, thinking that he was going to throw her to the ground. She wanted to flip over, but before she could do it, she fell into a pile of bedding. Bedding? Chapter 1290. She remembered that this place was filled with rocks. Where did the bedding come from? She opened her eyes and looked around. She was stunned. She was in a luxurious house. Black and white were the main colors. Whether it was the bed curtains with tassels or the obsidian screen at the door, she couldn't be more familiar with them. This was clearly a miniature version of the Almighty's bedroom. Ning Xuema wanted to jump up. However, just as she moved, his tall body pressed down on her. She was pressed under his body and couldn't move at all. Only her heart was beating wildly. Didn't you want to consummate your marriage? I'll fulfill your wish. Shen Jiuli bent down and looked at her. His blue eyes seemed to have a whirlpool. Was he serious? Or was this some new trick? The image of him and Yunshi together flashed through her mind. She felt a sharp pain in her heart. She didn't want to sleep with him without knowing why. She couldn't help but push him. No. Get up first. No. Shen Jiuli's eyes became deeper and seemed to be gathering anger. He raised his hand and stopped her. Didn't you want to consummate your marriage with someone else? Ning Xuema was also angry. She blurted out, I don't want to consummate my marriage with you. Even if they wanted to consummate their marriage, it shouldn't be in such a messy situation. Her words were simply adding fuel to the fire. Shinjuli's aura suddenly turned cold. This is not up to you. He would never allow her to marry Shiju or Shuilan. He waved his sleeve. Ning Xuema only felt a chill on her body. The man's robe that she was wearing was instantly removed from her body. Ning Xuema's expression changed. Hey, you can't? She didn't have time to finish her sentence because his lips kissed her again and sealed her mouth. Ning Xuema was speechless. He was very skilled at kissing. In addition, he was determined to win this time. Every deep kiss almost sucked her soul out. At the same time, his hands weren't idle either. His fiery fingertips wandered all over her body. Ning Xuema suddenly felt a lump in her throat. 10 years ago they were also this intimate. At that time there was no gap between them, unlike now. He didn't know when her stiff body had softened, but she was trembling slightly under his body. She no longer had any strength in her palm to push him away. Shinjuli could clearly feel the subtle changes in her body. His kisses also changed from a wild storm to a gentle drizzle, bit by bit, as if he was trying to soothe the knot in her heart. He kissed her eyebrows, her eyes, her nose, her lips, her chin, her collarbone, and then slowly moved downwards. Ning Xuema's body trembled slightly. She didn't know if it was because she was nervous or something else. Her rationality wanted her to push him away, but 10 years of yearning made her yearn for his kiss, his embrace. She wanted to hug his waist tightly and cry, but she also wanted to bite him a few more times to vent her anger. It was as if there was a pot of boiling water in his chest, boiling endlessly. She glanced around and suddenly saw her own set of clothes. Her body stiffened. God, she still had the appearance of a man. She still had the appearance of a very ordinary man. She had the appearance of a man, but she was pressed down by him. This scene was so beautiful no matter how she thought about it. Especially when he was so beautiful that even the heavens would be angry. Ning Xuema was shocked by this scene. She couldn't help but push him again. You, get up. Not now. She didn't want to have sex with him like this. It would leave a psychological shadow. Chapter 1291. She used a lot of strength this time and Shinjuli was almost pushed over by her. He held his breath and grabbed her hand again, looking into her eyes. Because she had the urge to cry just now, her eyes were still a little misty, as if there were tears gathering. His heart tightened as if it was hit hard by something. Did she not want to be with him that much? His eyes darkened, and with a flick of his finger, Ning Xuema's self-made singlet flew away without a trace. Why not? His voice was slightly hoarse, as if he was bitterly suppressing something. At this time his clothes were also wide open, revealing his firm jade-like skin. When Ning Xuema raised her eyes, she looked at him with eyes full of spring. His body was the legendary golden ratio. Half of his clothes were taken off, and his body was faintly discernible. It was simply tempting to commit a crime. His black hair hung around her like a curtain, and when he looked at her deeply, his eyes were burning with fire, as if he wanted to swallow her whole. Ning Xuema's heart was beating fast, and at the same time she felt even more miserable. She gritted her teeth and said, I still have the appearance of a man. Facing her like this, could he really swallow her? Did he have such a good appetite? Shinjuli was stunned, and he looked at her without saying a word. Ning Xuema's rationality, which had almost been kissed away by him, was showing signs of coming back. Besides, she really did not want to sleep with him without knowing why. 10 years ago he said that he would give her a clear answer when she reached level 8, but he had lost his memory. Shinjuli's gaze was too deep, and it made Ning Xuema's heart beat fast and her scalp tingled. Now is not the time, she said as she raised her hand to push him. Not the time. Excuse? If she and Shuilan got married, wouldn't they be in the bridal chamber now? Did she also think that it was not the time? Shinjuli pursed his lips into a thin line as he recalled the scene of the two people hugging and bowing down to him. He didn't say anything. Instead, he flicked his finger on Ning Xuema's face. Ning Xuema shuddered as if she had been thoroughly washed by water. She subconsciously closed her eyes. When she opened them again, there was a mirror in front of her. In the mirror was a young girl with rosy cheeks. It was her original appearance. Ning Xuema was speechless. While she was still in a daze, his body pressed down on hers again. Their bodies overlapped, and they could feel each other's heat and the changes in each other's bodies. Ning Xuema's heart almost shrunk into a ball. Shinjuli's breathing was getting heavier. She could already feel his burning hardness. This made her heart beat even more frantically. Although she had memories of her previous life and the memories of having sex with Shinjuli in this life, it was her first time. A girl's first time was always instinctively avoided. His kiss landed on her again. It was as strong as a thunderbolt and he was determined to get her. "Shuema, you're mine." This sentence was like a declaration. It was very much like the Almighty's style. Ning Shuema's soul was already flying out of her body from his kiss. Her reaction was a little slow. When she heard his declaration, her heartstrings trembled. Before she could react, he had already rushed in. Although the preparation work was done well and she had a strong reaction, but this was her first time after all. And the Almighty was the Almighty. His energy and some parts of his body were also inhuman. Although she was mentally prepared, Ning Shuema still felt as if she was being split open alive. She couldn't help but cry out softly as tears rolled down her cheeks. Chapter 1292. Shunjuli's movements finally became gentler. Although he was forcing her, he wasn't too violent when he really did it. In fact, he had already tried his best to control his strength. Seeing her tears, his heart trembled as if it was scalded. He leaned over and kissed away the tears on her face. His arms held her firmly as he said hoarsely, "Shuema, it will be a little painful. Bear with it." Ning Shuema was in so much pain that her entire body was trembling. Damn it, how was it a little painful? It was extremely painful, alright? Although she had always wanted to seduce him to roll in the sheets, she still wanted to do it aesthetically and not here in this desolate valley. God, was this house that he built with his technique strong enough? If Shiju came in at this time, "You, get out." She couldn't help but push him again. If he went out at this time, his body would really explode and he would die. Shunjuli temporarily stabilized his body and held her tightly in his arms. "Shuema, bear with it. It will be fine in a while." Ning Shuema suddenly bit his shoulder. "Shunjuli, I hate you to death." She didn't know what to feel in her heart. It was like hatred and resentment, joy and sadness. Her body was in pain and she had no other choice but to bite him to vent her anger and divert her attention. Shunjuli's shoulders slightly stiffened. He allowed her to bite him and quietly waited for her to adapt. Ning Shuema quickly tasted the blood in her mouth. She slowly loosened her mouth and looked at the bloody teeth marks on his shoulder. Her gaze slightly trembled and she looked away. When her face gradually turned from pale to red, Shunjuli knew that it was time. The bed curtain had unknowingly fallen down and covered the hot spring scene inside the curtain. Under the dim light of the night pearl, one could only faintly see two figures intimately overlapping inside. Some figures were moving up and down, causing the bed curtain to sway like flowing water. Time slipped by amidst these ups and downs and slipped by the time the dust settled, several hours had already passed. Ning Shuema herself didn't know how many times she was carried by him to the clouds. In the end, when everything was settled, she finally fainted and didn't wake up even after being struck by lightning. Shunjuli gasped for breath for a moment before finally sitting up. He looked down at her sleeping face, the expression in his eyes fluctuating intensely. Ning Shuema Shui Yamo, it was her in both lives. Shunjuli didn't expect that after the peak of passion, he would vaguely recall some memories from 3,000 years ago. "Shui Yamo, in the past to save Shui Yilan, you didn't hesitate to take my heart's blood and abandon me. In this life, why did you disguise yourself as Ning Shuema and come to my side? Why?" When the last bolt of the heavens to Shwek, his heart almost sank to the bottom of the water. "Not good, I'm going to fall asleep again." Shunjuli had an unknown illness. Every 900 years he would fall into a deep sleep for 10 years. When he woke up, he would completely forget everything as if he had been reborn. He didn't expect that the heavenly tribulation this time would bring forward the time of his sleep, a full 100 years earlier. He still hadn't told Shuema about this matter. He was afraid that Ning Shuema would be distracted after hearing this news, and wouldn't be able to cultivate peacefully. His original plan was to urge Ning Shuema to cultivate until she reached level 8, and then he would help her expel the demon in her body and help her pass the tribulation. Chapter 1293. His original plan was to urge Ning Shuema to cultivate to level 8. Then he would help her get rid of the demon in her body and help her pass the calamity. Of course he would also marry her. Then he would let her cultivate to heaven stage level 1 within 50 years. Then she would be able to accompany him forever. It wouldn't be too late to tell her his actual situation after she reached heaven stage. By then she would already be his wife. Naturally, she would stay by his side and wait for him to wake up to tell him everything that had happened. His plan was very good. It was planned for both of them. But he didn't expect that the period of coma would be brought forward. Now, it was a huge mistake, she was still waiting for his return at home. And he was destined not to return for the time being. She would probably be anxious to death, she would probably desperately search for him all over the world. With her strange fate, if she were to leave Buddha Lotus Mountain, she would probably meet with a great calamity again. What would happen to her without him by her side? Waves of darkness shrouded him. He couldn't hold on any longer. His body slowly fell down and fell into the flames. What was worse was that when he was close to the period of coma, he would make preparations for it. For example, he would find a clean room, call Rongyue Tianlan, write some reminders for him to know when he woke up, and give it to Rongyue Tianlan so that he could pass it to him when he woke up. Every time he woke up, even if he didn't recognize anyone, he could still recognize his own handwriting, but now he didn't do any of these preparations. And the place where he was going to sleep was a forbidden area that could burn his body at any time. He held on to his last bit of consciousness and took out a pure gold sound-transmitting talisman. He dripped a drop of blood on it and connected. Rongyue, come to the forbidden land of melting fire. Before he could finish his sentence, he was completely shrouded in darkness. When the special sound-transmitting talisman on Rongyue Tianlan's waist lit up, his expression changed greatly. This sound-transmitting talisman was special. It could only be connected when the emperor was about to fall asleep. Usually it was just a decoration. The last few words that the emperor spat out after he connected made Rongyue Tianlan dare not delay for even a second. He flew up. Dizwa, why did you go to that godforsaken place? Wasn't your period of coma 100 years later? Why was it so much earlier? There were countless questions in his heart, but no one answered for him. Dizwa, you have to hold on. Before he lost consciousness, Shinjuli desperately tried to hypnotize himself. Ning Xuema is the most important person to you, the most important person. She is your most important disciple. He didn't dare to say that she was his wife because he was a god. His words were like gold and jade. Once he said that Ning Xuema was his wife, she would definitely go through the God-Queen tribulation immediately. With her current psychokinesis, she wouldn't even be able to survive the first tribulation. Xuema, I'm sorry, an ice room. Yunshi stared quietly at the man lying on the ice bed in a daze. She wanted to reach out and caress his handsome face, but in the end she paused. There was an intense battle in her eyes as she silently withdrew her hand. She had been by his side for 8 years. Looking at Shinjuli, who was quietly lying on the bed, a hint of struggle flashed through her eyes. She could only take a good look at Shinjuli and touch his hand during the years that he was asleep. Every time she touched his hand she would feel a sense of satisfaction, but at the same time she would feel guilty and nervous. Chapter 1294. Every time she touched his hand, a sense of satisfaction rose in her heart. At the same time she felt guilty and nervous. She was afraid that Rongyue Tianlan, who had returned early, would see her molesting Shinjuli. However, Shinjuli usually slept for 10 years, so this time Rongyue Tianlan should only come out of seclusion after 2 years. In other words, no one would know what she was going to do next. A hint of nervousness flashed across Yunshi's eyes. She looked at Shinjuli's beautifully shaped, light red lips and felt a strong desire to kiss him. Yunshi couldn't help but look outside the cave. Phew, there was no one. She turned her head again and focused her gaze on Shinjuli's handsome face. She got up and slowly moved closer to Shinjuli. His handsome face was getting closer and closer. Yunshi felt her heart beating like a drum and her hands sweating nervously. He was getting closer and closer. Yunshi's heart was about to jump out of her chest. She looked at the face in front of her, which was less than 5 centimeters away. She swallowed her saliva, closed her eyes slightly and kissed him. Just as she was about to touch his lips, Shinjuli's eyelashes suddenly trembled. Yunshi suddenly felt a cold gaze on her face. Her heart sank and she quickly opened her eyes. She was so scared that her heart almost stopped beating. Shinjuli had already opened his eyes. His eyes were as pure and deep as the deep sea as he looked at her expressionlessly. Before Yunshi could react, her body flew out. She cried out in surprise and fell hard on the ground. She almost fainted from the fall. Julie! Yunshi cried out in pain. Who are you? Why were you so close to me just now? Shinjuli's indifferent voice rang out in the cave with his usual frosty tone. Yunshi looked up and saw Shinjuli standing quietly not far away. He was wearing a loose robe with cloud patterns flowing slowly on his white robe. He lowered his head slightly and looked at her expressionlessly. Her heart suddenly started to beat wildly. Shinjuli doesn't remember anything now. He should believe whatever I say, right? In the past, she had stayed by his side with Rongyue Tianlan, waiting for him to wake up. She was too embarrassed to say anything, so she could only tell Shinjiuli that she was his good friend. But this time, in order to heal Shinjiuli, Rongyue Tianlan had used up too much of her power. She had already gone into seclusion and would only return after 2 years. A look of determination flashed across Yunxi's eyes as she said helplessly, "Julie? I'm Yunxi. Don't you remember me?" Shinjiuli looked at her quietly without saying a word. Yunxi took a deep breath and tried her best to calm herself down. She tried her best to control herself and keep her tone steady. "I am your fiancé. I have to introduce myself like this every time you wake up." Shinjuli's calm gaze fell on her face. Yunxi was so nervous that she didn't even dare breathe loudly as she stared at his face. "You're lying." Shinjuli's voice was as indifferent as water with the coldness of early spring. Yunxi only felt her heart sink. Could it be that he didn't lose his memory because he woke up early this time? Her heart seemed to sink into icy water. If Shinjuli didn't lose his memory and she had lied to him, would they not be friends anymore? No, he must have lost his memory. Otherwise, he wouldn't have asked her who she was the moment he woke up. Maybe he didn't believe her at first. As long as she persisted, he would gradually believe her. Chapter 1295. In the past, Shinjuli hadn't believed that Rongyu was his friend. Every time he woke up, he had to fight with Rongyu Tianlan to slowly believe it. That must be the case. He just didn't believe it subconsciously. She just had to persevere a little longer. This was a great opportunity for him to acknowledge her and get closer to her. She definitely couldn't miss this opportunity. She didn't want to be his friend for life. She just wanted to be his wife and be on equal footing with him. She tried her best to squeeze out a natural smile and said calmly, "Jiuli, I'm really your fiancé. You just forgot." Shinjiuli frowned slightly. His indifferent gaze had a tinge of scrutiny as he sized Yunxi up from head to toe. Something was wrong. Something still felt wrong. Shinjiuli glanced at Yunxi and said indifferently, "Do you have a keepsake?" Keepsake. Shinjiuli had never given her a keepsake. Yunxi's palms were sweaty. She didn't know what to do for a moment. He had only given her a soul-searching bird and a winged snow lion. Yunxi made up her mind. A light flashed in her hand and a small, snow-white bird appeared in her palm. She held the soul-searching bird with both hands and looked up at Shinjiuli. "Jiuli, this is the soul-searching bird you gave me. You said that I could find you through it?" Shinjiuli glanced at the soul-searching bird in her palm and felt that something was wrong. If Shinjiuli had given his fiancée a keepsake, why would he have given her a bird? He glanced at Yunxi but didn't say anything. When Yunxi saw that his face was still indifferent, her heart sank. There was a hint of bitterness in her voice as she said, "Jiuli, do you really not remember me?" Shinjiuli finally spoke. His voice was still indifferent and emotionless. "Did I personally admit that you are my fiancé?" Yunxi blushed and bit her lip. She lowered her eyes and said shyly, "Yes." Shinjuli's voice was cold as he said, "Yunxi, you are lying." Yunxi's face turned pale as she stared blankly at him. She didn't understand what had gone wrong. Why didn't he believe her? Her lips moved slightly as if she wanted to say something. Shinjuli's clear and cold voice rang out. "If I personally admit that you are my fiancé, you will definitely experience the Divine Queen Tribulation. However..." Shinjuli glanced at her indifferently. Yunxi felt as if his gaze had the power to see through everything, as if he could see through all of her thoughts. "There are no traces of tribulation on your body," Shinjuli said faintly. Divine Queen Tribulation? He had never talked about this before. She had also never known about this matter. When his wife was about to undergo the Divine Empress Tribulation, heavens, she had no idea that her lie had such a fatal flaw. Yunxi had bitten her lips until they were white. Her mind was blank and she was extremely flustered. What should he do now? He had seen through her. Yunxi wanted to run away from his oppressive gaze. What should he do? Yunxi was as anxious as a cat on a hot tin roof. Shinjuli's gaze on her was getting colder and colder, but she couldn't think of a way out. "Who exactly are you?" Shinjuli's voice was so cold that it could freeze. In her anxiety, Yunxi suddenly had an epiphany. She looked up and forced a relaxed smile. "You saw through me again. Jolie, you are really amazing. Every time I spend years racking my brains to come up with a lie to test you, you can always see through it." Chapter 1296. In a moment of panic, Yunxi suddenly had an epiphany. She looked up and forced a relaxed smile. "Ah, you saw through me again. Julie, you're really amazing. Every time I spent years racking my brain to come up with a lie to test you, you could always see through it. Okay, I'm not playing anymore. I'm your friend. Every time you fell asleep, you would inform me and roam you at Tianlan to watch over you. She hurriedly explained the situation at that time and even took out a few pieces of evidence. Shinjuli finally looked at her with a less cold gaze. He said lightly, "Don't do it again. So sore. So painful." All the bones in her body seemed to have been broken and scattered. She didn't even want to move a finger. Ning Xuema lay on the bed and inadvertently looked out of the window. The sun was already setting in the west. It was evening. Obviously, she had slept for the whole day. She didn't know why, but she remembered what Shinjuli said to her 10 years ago when she misunderstood that Shinjuli had slept with her. "If I really did it with you, do you think you would still be able to get out of bed? Would you still be alive and kicking?" At that time she was indeed alive and kicking. She even had one foot on the chair to increase her aura. Now she finally understood what he meant when he said those words back then. Last night's craziness for her seemed to flash through her mind like a movie. His intense kiss, his dominance, and his irrefutable attitude. Ning Xuema pursed her lips and slowly raised her hand. The brocade quilt slid off her shoulders, revealing the marks on her body. It was a clear indication of how intense the two of them had been last night. Just this one movement caused her arm to ache terribly, and she fell weakly again. "Shinjuli, you're so strong." The Almighty was indeed worthy of being called the Almighty. He was so good at this kind of kung fu that it almost made her fall apart. Ever since she fell in love with Shinjuli, she had imagined this day generously. She had imagined many scenes of her first time sleeping with the Almighty, but this was the only one she didn't think of. She had been raped. She was raped by Shinjuli. Her gaze fell on her wrist, where there was still a faint bruise, which was left behind when he clamped down on her struggling wrist. She moved a little and then cursed under her breath. Her waist felt like it was about to break. Especially that place, it was burning with pain. "Shinjuli, you beast. At that time, when this old lady was trying her best to seduce you, you were as immovable as a mountain. So it turns out that you have this type of personality." She glanced around and saw that she was the only one on the big bed. Shinjuli was nowhere to be seen. She gritted her teeth and forced herself to sit up. Only then did she realize that her body had already been treated. Those bruises had all been treated by him with ointment. Now only shallow scars were left. She was wearing a soft nightgown. It was loose and simple, just like Shinjuli's taste. Needless to say, he had helped her change into this dress after she had fallen asleep. Other than those suspicious marks on her body, she looked extremely fresh, as if she had just taken a shower. Needless to say, he had used the cleansing spell on her. Ning Xuema gave him a small thumbs up in her heart for his good work in dealing with the aftermath. But since he had already dealt with the aftermath, why didn't he help her get rid of the soreness and fatigue? Chapter 1297. She felt as if she had just finished a marathon. Was he trying to show her how strong he was? Ning Xuema's mind was still in a mess. She closed her eyes and emptied her mind for a while. Then she started to regulate her breathing. Time ticked by. When Ning Xuema opened her eyes again, it was already half an hour later. She had recovered a lot of her strength. She got off the bed and walked around a few times. Other than some parts of her body that were still sore and her legs were a little weak, she had no problem walking normally. She looked around the room again. Suddenly her gaze froze. She wasn't in the main hall that had been transformed from the valley. She was in Shinjuli's bedroom on Tianin Peak. He had actually carried her back to Tianin Peak while she had been unconscious. The Almighty was indeed the Almighty. His efficiency was high. She looked around the hall again. Shinjuli hadn't returned. She was the only one in the hall. That's strange. Where did he go? Shouldn't he be by her side asking about her well-being at this time? Why was he nowhere to be seen? Could he have regretted it after raping her and scared her away? Given Shinjuli's personality, he shouldn't be so irresponsible. So where exactly did he go? Ning Xuema didn't want to make wild guesses. She simply dressed up and walked out, wanting to look for him. Unexpectedly, she didn't find Shinjuli. Instead, she found a newly built 2-story building in a bamboo forest. The building was built in the Almighty's style. However, the crystal bells hanging from the 4 corners of the building were different from the Almighty's usual style. Ning Xuema's heart sank when she saw the building. This building was faintly opposite the side hall that she lived in. It happened to be on both sides of Shinjuli's main hall. The image of Shinjuli and Yunshi holding hands flashed across Ning Xuema's mind. Her hands and feet suddenly turned cold. Was this a place that he had built for Yunxi? Had Yunxi finally moved into the Tianyin Peak? With Shen Jiuli's character, he would never let outsiders stay. Back then, when Rongyu Tianlan came here to play, she would also go to the guest room set up by the Sun Moon sect below to rest after dark. She would not stay on the Tianyin Peak. Yunxi was even more so. Every time she came, no matter how late she played chess with Shen Jiuli would ask her to leave. But this time, could it be that they had already decided on their marriage? Then what was he? What was he in Shen Jiuli's eyes? Since he and Yunxi had already reached this stage, why was he forcing himself on her? Could it be that he wanted to imitate the Yellow Emperor and marry 2 concubines? Enjoy the blessings of multiple wives? She stood where she was as if her feet were nailed to the ground. She felt as if she had fallen into an ice cave, and her body was cold. She raised her head and stared upstairs. The curtains were lowered and a snow-white veil fluttered in the wind. One look and she could tell that this was a woman's residence. Ning Xuema clenched her fists. After thinking for a while, she shouted, "Is there anyone upstairs? Can you show yourself?" No matter what, she had to have a good chat with Yunxi and find out what was going on. She didn't want to make things difficult for herself by making assumptions. She wanted the truth. The building was quiet and there was no movement. Ning Xuema called out twice more, but there was still no response. She steeled her heart and flew upstairs. "I'm coming in." After not getting any response, Ning Xuema simply pushed the door open and entered. Chapter 1298. As expected, there was no trace of Yunxi in the building. However, there were traces of her everywhere. The interior was elegantly decorated. Whether it was the dressing table or the white jade couch, they all had the faint aura of a fairy. There was a small ivory comb on the dressing table, a bronze mirror engraved with patterns on the back, a few strands of long hair in the corner of the dressing table, and a small crystal hairpin. This crystal hairpin belonged to Yunxi. Ning Xuema had seen Yunxi wear it before. The cloud pattern engraved on it was a pattern that didn't exist on this continent. The mattress in the bedroom was neat and tidy. There was even Yunxi's orchid-like fragrance in the room. Yunxi wasn't in the room. To be exact, she wasn't in the building at all. She had also gone out. Could she have gone to watch the sunset and count the stars with Shinjuli? Ning Xuema stood in place for a moment before flying out and starting to search the Tianyin Peak. No matter what, she had to find them and get an answer. An hour later she was disappointed. She had already searched the entire Tianyin Peak, but she couldn't find any trace of Shinjiuli and Yunxi. She steeled her heart and was about to leave the peak to search when she bumped into Yelu Jing and was holding a box of food. When she saw Ning Xuema, she smiled. "Xuema, you're up? Are you hungry? Here are some of your favorite foods. Why don't you have some first?" As she spoke, she took out a few dishes and placed them on the small table next to her. The food was indeed sumptuous. There were 2 meat dishes and 2 vegetable dishes, all of which she usually liked. More importantly, they were all medicinal cuisines that could greatly restore one's strength. One of them even had the effect of reducing swelling and pain. If it had been any other time, Ning Xuema would have felt a little warm inside when she saw these dishes. However, she felt like she had been slapped in the face. The special soreness in her body made her feel humiliated. "Did the great master ask you to send these?" Ning Xuema asked after taking a breath. "Master instructed me to send them to you at this hour." Yelu Jing, and didn't hide anything and smiled. Ning Xuema. "What about him?" "Master only instructed us to do this. He didn't tell us his whereabouts. Did he sneak away again? Had he gone traveling with Yunxi again? Or was it because he had raped her on a whim and felt sorry for Yunxi so he had coaxed her?" Ning Xuema could only feel the fire in her heart rising. What was this? Daring to do it but not daring to admit it? What did he take her for? She suppressed the anger in her heart. What else did he say? Yelu Jing glanced at her and could already see that her mood wasn't good. Moreover, the way she addressed her master was also a bit strange. She kept saying he, even omitting the word master. Master didn't say anything else. "He only told me to tell you that you have to train hard and eat well these few days." Ning Xuema. These few days? Did that mean that he would be missing for a few more days? She suddenly felt like laughing. Nothing good ever happened whenever he went missing. Plus, he had gone missing with Yunxi, Yelu Jing, and chatted a bit more with her and then left. Ning Xuema slowly sat down at the table. Based on Yelu Jing's tone, he didn't know about her actual relationship with the Great Master. He had already rolled in the sheets with her and had no intention of explaining their relationship, let alone marrying her. Did he want her to follow him without knowing the reason? Disciple and lover? Or did he still want her to be a concubine? Chapter 1299. Fairy Yunxi as the main wife? Shenjiuli, I'm telling you, don't even think about it. She looked at the dishes on the table and took a deep breath. With a wave of her sleeves, she smashed the plates and cups onto the ground, smashing them into pieces. Shenjiuli, now that things have developed to this point, you have to give me an explanation. Don't even think about making me follow you around without knowing anything. You want to disappear for a few days, right? Fine, I'll wait for you to come back. I'll wait for you to give me an explanation. If you really have feelings for Yunxi, I won't agree even if you kneel and beg me to be your main wife, let alone a concubine. I'll completely cut off all ties with you. Ning Shuima didn't expect to wait for 8 days. During these 8 days, Shenjiuli didn't come back even once. Of course, Yunxi didn't come back either. On the other hand, Yelu Jing'an's food was delivered on time. Twice a day the food was different every time. How could Ning Shuima have the appetite to eat? Moreover, she had already cultivated the Anidia technique, so it didn't matter if she didn't eat. During these 8 days, her body had already returned to normal, and her movements were like a gust of wind. She cultivated as usual. Perhaps it was because of the injustice in her heart, but the demon in her body became more and more arrogant. Almost every time she closed her eyes, the little Loli's voice would ring in her ears, making all kinds of noise and urging her negative emotions. For example, he must be regretting it. He loved you so much in his previous life, but once he didn't love you anymore, he could still be so cruel to you. Now that he has lost his memory, he must want to abandon you again. He and Yunxi must have gone to play hand in hand, right? After all, he has been very close to Yunxi since he lost his memory. Momo, what are you waiting for? Are you waiting for him to marry you? Stop dreaming. Look at the entire Sun-Moon sect. Does it look like they're holding a wedding? He doesn't even plan to have a showdown with the Sun-Moon sect disciples. The little Loli's every word was like an iron nail, hammering into Ning Shuima's heart, making her frustrated and making her want to go berserk. She felt as if she was going crazy. Half of her wanted to destroy everything, and the other half was filled with negative emotions. The other half of him kept telling himself to be rational and not to go on a rampage like a madman. That way she wouldn't be her and she would be degrading herself. She was Ning Shuima, the straightforward Ning Shuima. She wanted to wait for an answer before deciding whether to stay or leave. At the very least, even if he had to leave in a carefree manner. He couldn't let anyone see him as a joke. She decided to wait for Shenjiuli for another 2 days. If he didn't come back by then, she wouldn't wait any longer. She would leave on her own. He would never appear in front of him again. She loved him, she liked him, but she would not let her love be too humble. She also had her pride. So what if they had rolled in the sheets? She could still happily let go and wander the Jianghu happily, without being tied down by anyone or anything. Love was not everything in this world. Other than love, she actually had many things to do and many things to attract her attention. Love is a bastard. Once the old one is gone, maybe a new one will come. Time slowly passed by in the hourglass. Another 2 days passed. Ning Shuima sat at the top of the white pagoda and looked at the distant sky. She watched as the twilight slowly faded and the sky turned white. Then, she watched as the red sun finally jumped out and revealed its red face. Chapter 1300. She lowered her eyes slightly and chuckled. It was time for her to completely let go. Did she want to hear him say regret, with her own ears? She wanted to hear him say that it was just a whim that night and it didn't mean anything? Ning Shuima, wake up. His refusal to see them had already represented his current attitude. Why do you want to stay here and embarrass yourself? She had already asked Yelu Jing, and 2 days ago, and knew that he and Shenjiuli were still in contact. This time Shenjiuli wasn't missing. He just didn't want people to know his whereabouts. Ning Shuima had already told Yelu Jing, and 2 days ago, that she would wait for Dizun for 2 more days. If Dizun didn't come back, she would truly let go. She believed that Yelu Jing and would pass on her final warning. Since he still didn't come back, it meant that he had tacitly agreed to let go, right? She didn't think that the final result between them would be like this. The great god who had lost his memories was not the original great god. She lowered her eyes to look at the sea of clouds under her feet. She vaguely remembered the scene of him holding her and falling down with her 10 years ago. She remembered that she had truly fallen in love with him at that time. She didn't think that once she fell in love, it would bring about this kind of eternal damnation. Now she finally woke up from this dream. It was time for her to completely leave. She took a light breath and stood up. Just as she was about to jump back to the mountain peak, she froze when she saw the person who suddenly appeared. There was a person standing in front of her. He was wearing a wide robe with large sleeves and a silver mask on his face. Only a pair of ink-black eyes were revealed as he coldly looked at her. His temperament was like ice and snow, incomparably cold. Ning Xuema's heart skipped a beat. Her eyes met his for a moment and she suddenly smiled. Her smile was like a flower, brilliant like the sunset. Great God! She called out as if she was wronged and happy at the same time. She also seemed to be complaining. You still know to come back? Do you know how hard it was for me to wait for you? Her figure rose and she threw herself at the person in front of her. The man's eyes flashed and he opened his arms slightly, waiting for her to jump into his embrace. As expected, Ning Xuema did not disappoint him. Like a swallow returning to the forest, she threw herself into his arms. However, before that person could do anything else, his body suddenly shook. A moonlight-colored email piercer pierced through his chest and came out from his back. That person's gaze changed and he sent a palm strike towards Ning Xuema. However, he had obviously underestimated Ning Xuema's reflexes. She didn't continue to fight after she succeeded in her first move. Her figure retreated like flowing water and escaped from the envelopment of his palm power. Of course, while she was retreating, she didn't forget to pull out her email piercer. The sharp email piercer left a bloody hole in that person's chest. It was exactly the same spot where Ning Xuema was injured. Wuemo, I won't fall at the same place twice. Does it hurt to be stabbed by this sword? Ning Xuema stood on top of a big rock and coldly looked at the person in front of her. At that time he had schemed against her like this. Now she was giving him a taste of his own medicine. She wanted him to have a taste of his own medicine. She had never been a magnanimous lady. She was particular about people who respected her, and she would respect them tenfold. If someone bullied her, she would return the favor tenfold. She had wanted to take revenge for a long time, but she couldn't find the opportunity. It was rare for this bastard to send himself to her door, so why should she be polite? She had stabbed him in the heart and it was exceptionally accurate. Chapter 1301. The only thing that surprised her was that she couldn't feel his heartbeat even though she had stabbed his heart. It was as if this person didn't have a heartbeat. Wu Emo covered his wound with his hand and looked up at her. You're smart. Aren't you afraid that you've stabbed Dizun? He and Dizun were very similar. Even Yilu Jing, and couldn't tell the difference at first glance. This girl was so far away. How could she tell at a glance? The corner of Ning Xuema's lips hooked up. You are not him. Even if a dog is painted with a tiger's skin, it's not a tiger. She didn't say that she could smell people's breath. The reason why she was fooled last time was because she was too emotional and cried, causing her nose to be stuffy. Secondly, she didn't guard against him at all. How could she fall for the same trick this time? When she threw herself into his arms, she sensed his murderous intent and smelled his breath that was different from Shinjioli's. This bastard obviously wanted to assassinate her again. But this time, Ning Xuema made the first move and gained the upper hand. Ning Xuema spoke casually on the surface, but she was secretly paying attention to his injury. The uneasiness in her heart was expanding. She clearly pierced his heart and pulled out her sword in time. How could he only bleed so little? The blood didn't seem to be spurting out, but it seemed to be flowing out slowly. The bright red blood only wet a small area on his chest, as if he had only been cut a little. Wu Mo's eyes were cold. He slowly let go of his hand. Ning Xuema, do you really think you can kill me? Ning Xuema looked at his wound and narrowed her eyes slightly. His wound was healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. There wasn't much blood, only a small area the size of a fist wet his clothes. What kind of monster was this Wu Mo? How could he be unharmed after being stabbed in the heart? Was this the ability of someone who had reached the heaven rank? His heart was no longer his weak point? Ning Xuemo retreated a few steps. She clenched the email piercer in her hand and stared at him warily. A pale white ice ball gradually appeared in Wu Mo's palm. The surrounding temperature instantly dropped. It was supposed to be a summer day, but at that moment, it felt like winter. The cold wind was bone-chilling. Ning Xuema's feet immediately froze. Ning Xuema, you are a scourge. Even if I die, I won't let you hurt him. Since I didn't kill you the first time, I'll kill you the second time. This time, I won't give you any chance to live. The ice ball in his palm was finally released. It spun in the air and instantly split into dozens of ice balls. They were all aimed at Ning Xuema. When the ice balls were released, even the heavens and the earth seemed to have sensed the murderous aura. The white clouds in the sky spun crazily. When the clouds collided, there was a series of thunder that almost blinded people's eyes. Wherever the ice balls went, even the air was frozen. The surrounding vegetation instantly withered and turned into ice needles. Under the guidance of the other ice balls, these ice needles also flew out continuously. They made a sharp whistling sound and attacked Ning Xuema, and Ning Xuema's expression changed slightly. She recognized this move. She had seen Shinjuli use it when he brought her to the ice field. Wherever it went, not even a blade of grass would be left. It could cut off the vitality of all living things. She didn't expect Wu Mo's first move to be this move. If she was hit by one of his ice balls or ice needles, she would immediately turn into a lump of ice and then explode with a bang. She wouldn't even have a piece of flesh left. Chapter 1302. At such a critical moment, Ning Xuema did not dare to be careless. She raised her hand and released a circle of fire shield to protect herself. Those ice balls and ice needles hit her fire shield and made a harsh sound. Then they turned into snow mist and dissipated. The vibration only made Ning Xuema's arms slightly numb, but it did not cause any real harm to her. Ning Xuema was secretly relieved. Although Wu Mo's kung fu was very similar to Di Zun's, the power was still much weaker. Furthermore, she was no longer the same Ning Xuema from 10 years ago who could be trampled upon by others. Currently, her martial arts had already reached Earth Realm level 8. The power she could display could reach Earth Realm level 9.5. In the Tianxi continent, it was already rare for her to meet an opponent. Therefore she could fight against Wu Mo. The two of them fought again. All kinds of moves emerged one after another. Wu Mo's moves were very similar to Shinjioli's. Ning Xuema had seen almost all of his moves before. After fighting with him for dozens of moves, she had a basic understanding of his martial arts and was able to counter his moves. After the real fight, Ning Xuema found that Wu Mo's moves were more conventional. It was more like a pre-programmed robot. Although it was very powerful, it was not very flexible. Ning Xuema had always been witty in fighting. She relied on her outstanding reaction and improvisation. She could adjust the moves at any time to achieve the best effect. She knew that Wu Mo was very familiar with the Sun Moon sect's kung fu. So, she simply mixed in the kung fu that she had learned before. In Wu Mo's view, every move of hers was specious. However, it was very accurate. Whether it was the moves or the angle, they were very tricky. It was impossible for him to guard against them. It was obvious that Wu Mo really wanted to kill her. The two of them fought, causing sand and rocks to fly everywhere. Every time their weapons collided, it was like a series of thunder. The movement was very loud. After such a big fight and for such a long time, no one came from Tianyin Peak. No one was willing to come up and take a look. It was obvious that Wu Mo had set up a wizardry barrier around her before he attacked her, so that no sound could be heard. Wu Mo had already cultivated to heaven rank level 2. Since the birth of his memories, this was the first time he met such a troublesome opponent like Ning Xuema. He had always appeared as an emperor, and there were very few people in this world who dared to fight against an emperor. Therefore he only occasionally made a move to establish his might. Often, his first move would be able to shock everyone to the spot, making them even more obedient than little chicks. There was almost no chance for him to make a move, and even less of a chance for him to truly fight with someone. Although he was much older than Ning Xuema, when it came to actual combat experience, he was still inexperienced compared to Ning Xuema. If it wasn't for the fact that his level was much higher than Ning Xuema's, perhaps he would have been defeated after exchanging a few blows. It was obvious that he had underestimated her this time. And the result of underestimating him was only one word: death. Ning Xuema, you want to kill me? Wu Mo said in the midst of the battle. Nonsense. Ning Xuema replied him straightforwardly. In the current situation, either he died or she died. She didn't have a second choice at all. If you kill me, you will definitely regret it. Wu Mo's voice was as calm as flowing water, but the words he said were full of weight. Ning Xuema pursed her lips and smiled. I never do things that I regret. However, her heart slightly sank. Wu Mo was the substitute of the great god. His relationship with the great god was not ordinary. Chapter 1303. Wu Mo was the substitute of the great god. His relationship with the great god was not ordinary. If she killed Wu Emo, Shinjuli would be very angry. What's more, Shinjuli was now indifferent to her. Even if they had sex once, it didn't mean anything. If Wu Emo died in her hands, how would Shinjuli treat her? Ning Xuema couldn't think of an answer to this question. Since she couldn't think of an answer, she simply didn't think about it. She had to take care of the present first. Wu Emo wanted to kill her now. She could only try her best to fight back. In a fight between two masters, she couldn't go easy. If she went easy, she wouldn't be able to see the sun tomorrow. Well, for Shinjuli's sake, if she had the absolute advantage, she would seriously injure Wu Emo or simply abolish his martial arts. He wouldn't be able to do anything and she would just let him live. The two of them fought again. After about 2 hours, Ning Xuema finally understood Wu Mo's martial arts. She began to fight back vigorously, forcing Wu Emo to retreat step by step. In this fight that was almost evenly matched, both of them were injured. Ning Xuema's light pink skirt had several blood stains, like blooming peach blossoms. However, what made her more gratified was that Wu Mo's body was obviously more injured than hers. The white robe on his body was stained with blood, almost turning into a flowery robe. Moreover, his wounds were much deeper than the wounds on her body. It was obvious that Ning Xuema had the upper hand in this fight. This feeling of turning the tables was really good. Ning Xuema's sullen heart finally relaxed a lot. Her mood was also much better. Wu Mo, last time I almost lost my life because of your plot. This time you want to plot against me a second time. Do you really think my temper is easy to pinch? This time if I don't beat you to a pulp, my surname is not Ning. Ning Xuema's Ame Piercer burst out a fireball and hit Wu Mo, causing him to retreat a few steps. You will regret it. Wu Mo said coldly. You've already said that 800 times. I'm tired of hearing it. Can't you find something new? Ning Xuema snorted disdainfully. After dodging his ruthless attack, she smiled brightly like a spring flower, and the move she sent out became even fiercer. A new wound was added to Wu Mo's white robe. If she didn't teach him a bloody lesson, he wouldn't know why the flowers were so red. The fresh blood on his body made Ning Xuema excited for no reason. Her eyes were faintly red. One move after another, she almost didn't give Wu Mo a chance to breathe. You're a witch. Ning Xuema, I won't let you succeed this time. Wu Mo's voice was cold and ruthless. Although he was already at a disadvantage, he had no intention of retreating. Ning Xuema wanted to laugh. Conspiracy? She just wanted to fall in love and have a good time. How did it become a conspiracy? What a joke. Wait a minute, he said she was a witch. Could it be that he knew about her past life? He knew about Shui Yimo. She simply asked, You know Shui Yimo? Wu Yimo snorted, Of course. How much do you know? Everything. Ning Xuema, it seemed that this Wu Yimo had been by Shinjuli's side for a long time. He even knew about the things that happened more than 3,000 years ago. However, she was no longer Shui Yimo but Ning Xuema. Even if the two of them had the same soul, she didn't need to pay for the things of her past life. Shui Yimo, even if you change your name and body, you're still you. Chapter 1304. Shui Yimo, even if you change your name and body, you're still you. An unscrupulous and ungrateful witch. Isn't it enough that you tricked him once? Do you want to trick him again? I won't let you succeed again. Wu Mo's calm eyes flashed with killing intent. As long as I'm here, I won't let you succeed again. What a dignified reason. Ning Xuema laughed and deliberately angered him. Won't succeed again? Do you think you can stop us? To tell you the truth, he and I have already achieved something good. So what if I set him up again? You can't do anything about it. Damn it, I'm going to anger you to death. You're really scheming. Ning Xuema, he's so good to you. Ah, we're like Zhou Yu beating Huang Gai. One is willing to hit and the other is willing to be hit. What can you do? Ning Xuema laughed complacently. Last time you took his heart's blood. Why are you doing it this time? This time it's to take his life. Ning Xuema continued to anger him. She always had the ability to anger people to death. At this moment she was also angered by Wu Mo. In order to achieve the best effect of angering him, she spoke without thinking. It's a pity that you won't be able to see it this time. You can't stop him from loving me. You're angry, right? You can't do anything even if you're angry. You can't kill me, you can only watch as my scheme succeeds. She spoke carefreely. Looking at Wu Mo's increasingly heavy and unmethodical moves, she finally vented the anger in her heart. She felt that her anger was almost vented. The Ame piercers flashed in the air and transformed into hundreds of them. With a flip of her palms, the hundreds of Ame piercers shot towards Wumo like a horse's peak leaving its nest. This was a new move that she had recently cultivated. This move looked dangerous, but in reality only the main piercers could really hurt people. The others were just illusions. Even if they really hit the body, they wouldn't cause any harm. However, they had a very frightening effect, making people unable to distinguish between reality and illusion. Ning Xuema was very calculative. When she made this move, she had already calculated all the directions that Wu Mo would dodge. If there were no accidents, her Ame piercers would pierce his Qihai acupoint and completely cripple his martial arts, but it wouldn't really take his life. Shinjuli, even though you have betrayed me by taking advantage of me, I still have to do you a favor. Seeing that you loved me so much before you lost your memory, I'll let you live. When she used this move, her body also floated up, her posture was graceful as if she was flying. She followed the real Ame piercer and flew over. She thought that if the first move failed, she could give him another palm strike. This time she was going to settle this once and for all, so that he would never be able to do anything to her again. Just as the real Ame piercer was about to reach Wu Mo, the surrounding air suddenly distorted. Wu's eyes suddenly he squatted down. Poof! A light sound was heard and blood spurted out like rain. The Ame piercers didn't pierce Wu Mo's Qihai acupoint. Instead, it pierced through his glabella. At the same time, there was a pop in the surrounding air. A light sound was heard, as if a wizardry barrier was broken in an instant. A white figure appeared out of thin air. Stop! He waved his sleeves. Ning Xuema had only used half of her movement technique when she saw the white-clothed man appear. Her heart fiercely jumped. Unfortunately, before she could do anything else, she felt a strong gust of wind blowing towards her. Chapter 1305. Her body was involuntarily swept up by the hurricane and flew out. Pung! Her body directly smashed into a huge rock. Although her skill was superior, she was still made of flesh and blood. The hurricane's strength was too great and she almost fainted from the impact. She slid to the ground and saw stars, making her unable to see the person in front of her clearly. Although her eyes couldn't see clearly, her heart was very clear. Great God, he finally came. She waited bitterly for him for 10 days, waiting for him to give her an explanation. She didn't expect that she would receive such an explanation. As soon as he appeared, he sent out a thunderous palm and almost slapped her into a picture. The blood in her chest crazily rolled over and over. The smell of blood wanted to rush up to her throat several times, but she swallowed it back down. She tried her best to open her eyes. After the dizziness passed, she finally saw everything in front of her. Her heart suddenly sank. On the opposite side, Wu Mo fell to the ground with a sword between his eyebrows. The mask on his face finally broke, revealing his celestial face. His face was as pale as a crystal. Compared to the blood on his forehead, his whole body was as fragile as glass. Shinjuli held his pulse with one hand. Wu Mo. He poured his psychokinesis into his body, trying to save his life. Dizun, don't fall into her trap again. Wu Mo's pale lips slightly opened. His usually emotionless eyes flashed with relief. You still don't believe me? Now I can only return it to you. I'm dead, your memory will recover and you will understand how she betrayed you in the past. His body emitted a circle of white light. His whole body became transparent at a speed visible to the naked eye. Finally, it turned into countless rays of light that circled around Shinjuli a few times and went into his glabella. Ning Xuema looked at all this with wide eyes. She was so shocked that she almost couldn't speak. Wu Mo's glabella was actually his weak point. But the sword she just shot out was obviously aimed at his Qihai point. Who would have thought that Wu Mo would squat down at the crucial moment? This was simply sending himself to death. She looked on helplessly as Wu Mo disappeared from the ground and turned into a ray of light that went into Shinjuli's body. She didn't know how to react. What exactly was Wu Mo? How could such a strange situation occur after his death? Could he be a manifestation of Shinjuli's memories? Would Shinjuli's memory be restored only after he died? Which life's memory would he recover? Was it all? And was Shui Yimo? In the midst of her extreme shock, a strong uneasiness arose within her, as if some great calamity were about to befall her. She sat there, blood trickling out from the corner of her mouth. She watched Shinjuli's body flicker with light, and his aura became colder and colder. The past flooded into his mind like a tide. The blood-stained little fox, the young lady seeking medical treatment, the charming seduction, the traveling hand in hand, the seemingly joking wedding ceremony, the wedding night, and the final stab of her sword, everything felt like it had happened yesterday, causing his face to turn pale. When he was in the bridal chamber with Ning Xuema, he already had some incomplete memories of his previous life in his mind. However, because it was incomplete, he couldn't connect them together at the moment. But now he remembered everything. He also finally understood Wu Mo's origin. He always thought that Wu Mo was his twin brother in his previous life, so he was willing to stay by his side as a shadow, as a substitute. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.